Good evening, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. And yes, I will eventually get an intro for the Dissident Dispatch broadcast. I have them for my interviews. So you might be wondering, why aren't you running that, Deb? Well, because I got so much feedback that it was too long and it really doesn't go. It's more for interviews. So I'm just going to jump right in to these Dissident Dispatch shows until further notice. If anyone would like to volunteer to make an intro for me to Dissident Dispatch, that could be a fun project if you're an enterprising creative type. So by all means, hit me up in the comments or send me an email at thereasonwelearn@gmail.com and we can talk about it. I would love that. And we can even talk about a free membership to The Reason We Learn at Wokescreen for anyone who would be so inclined. Speaking of which, if you're not already a subscriber to this channel, The Reason We Learn at YouTube, please do go ahead and subscribe right now. Like and share this broadcast so other people can join us live and ask questions and comment and get involved in the chat. If you are a member, have been following me for a long time and would like a little bit more personal private access to me personally, to get help with your kids' education or just to vent or talk or whatever, or even get help with getting started homeschooling, go to wokescreen.com/the reason we learn and join one of my two communities. I have The Reason We Learn at Wokescreen, and I also have The Reason We Parent, which is a little more of a parent support group. We meet on Sunday nights. I'm there, if you want to meet, we can meet. Otherwise, you can ping me and I can help you, on an ad hoc basis. I'm there for my members. So this is a little something extra I do because my DMs were filling up with requests. And I thought, you know what, let's corral this somewhere. So it's a Discord community. It's very private. I do not save anything but the information I need to know that you're a member of the group. That's it. I don't do anything else. You might get a newsletter from me, I don't know, once a month, but that's about it. Otherwise, this is where you'll find me at least a couple times a week. And I'm glad to be here. So the Dissident Dispatch show is a little edgier. It's a little more newsworthy. And many of you have probably tuned in before, but if not, that's what we're all about. Today, I am covering curriculum. It's a topic I've talked about a lot on this channel. I cover all things related to education here, K-12 all the way up through college, grad school, etc., because it's all interconnected. What they learn in college and grad school comes right back down to K-12, and it's a little circle. And it has been that way for 100 years, so nothing new. So what I do is I keep tabs on what's going on through a variety of means. Parents send me things that they have questions about. They say, this doesn't really look like what I saw when I went to school. What's different? Should I be concerned? Generally speaking, parents' gut instincts are spot on. They really are. It's amazing how little credit parents get for recognizing when something is amiss. And they also get gaslit. We're not doing that. What are you talking about? No, we don't do that at all. And then I'm looking at it going, yeah, here it is. So I get things from parents. I do my own research. So I go out and look at, who are the big curriculum developers and who's getting money from the big NGOs to put things into schools. And wait a minute, where did that equity math come from? So I go at it that way too. And across the year, as I said, I've put things out there for you in different videos. I've even done some Dissident Dispatch about what's going on in math or what's going on in science. What I'm going to do today is a little different. Hi, ego brain. Is a little different in that I'm catching up. So things I haven't covered yet this year that are new since the last time I covered curriculum, and they're constantly changing and adding to things. And I'm also going to give you a little bit of an overview as to, why. Why is this happening? Especially if you're new to this channel, you haven't gone back and seen all the other videos, all the other content that explains the why. And if you're not dialed into this, you might still be thinking like, how does this all connect? So I'm going to try to connect the dots for you because it is all connected. We may be 50 states plus territories, and we may each have state constitutions that decide how our schools, how education will be run in our states, public and private, by the way. Private's not completely off the grid. They do, to open a school in a state, depending on what state it is, you may have to abide by certain regulations, parochial schools as well. So we may be all these different states, but it's important for you to understand that the overall purpose of education right now in the in the eyes of our government, and by our government, I mean all of it. So the federal government, all the way down to your state house, with very few exceptions. Very few exceptions. They're notable, of course. You might have Governor DeSantis in Florida, who is pushing back on some of this, and maybe a couple of other governors who are telling you they're pushing back on things, but really they're just tinkering around the edges. And the fundamental purpose of education is remaining the same, and that is to turn out a workforce. Let me repeat that. Hi, Crystal. Let me repeat that. The purpose of education in America, as it is currently constituted as an institution, is to produce a workforce. And you might think, well, that's yeah, but it's an educated workforce. Define that. Define educated. Yes, but educated in a way that the state thinks is appropriate for the workforce. So you have to think about, what kind of workforce do they want? Well, the kind that pays taxes without complaining about it. The kind that pays the taxes before they even get their income without complaining about it. The kind that would really prefer to be an employee with all the benefits and the goodies that come with that than be an entrepreneur, because then you get more taxes because you can force the company to take it from the employee, whereas the entrepreneur can be their own accountant or hire an accountant and do things separately, and they don't necessarily prepay with the same degree of regularity. Government doesn't like that. So think about it that way. What would be the incentive of the government to be involved in education at all in the first place? Because it wants a workforce to pay taxes that support the government. It seems really obvious. Once you see it, you kind of can't unsee it, but there you go. Now, for 100 years, it's been that way. It was the declared purpose and intention of it from all the way back to Dewey. You can look into the research and the history of it. I'm not saying anything that isn't true. And that has just been reaffirmed and reaffirmed and reaffirmed. And no matter what other fancy decoration they put on, helping children succeed in the workforce, helping, them be effective in the workforce. Okay. But now, and this is probably not just since the Biden administration, but every Democrat run in, administration, but also a lot of the Republican ones, it's been a global thing. It's been a global thing. You might have thought the UN is about keeping the peace. Right? Is it keeping peace? Like, between countries so they don't go to war. I mean, you might think that's what it was supposed to be for. I think we all pretty much know now, if we pay attention at all, that's not what it's for. But I bet you're not as familiar with UNESCO. UNESCO is a little bit different. UNESCO stands for United Nations Education. I'm going to get it wrong. Well, the E is education. Okay. And what you probably aren't aware of is that back in 1953, there was a meeting, and representatives from lots of different countries got together, including the United States, to decide, what schools should do the world over, what the whole point of education was. So I'm leading my show about curriculum with this because I want you to understand. So many people are still walking around thinking my school board chooses my curriculum, right? No. Well, certainly my state board of ed does, right? No. A little more, but no. Well, but then who's choosing it? Well, let's back up. What is curriculum? I already told you the purpose of schooling is to create a workforce that serves the state very well, very nicely. I mean, it happens to serve you too. That's a bonus, but really primarily so serve the state. So what then would curriculum be? What would you need to know if you were being groomed to be part of the workforce? Well, you would need to know what the state deems is important to know. And you would probably not be shown or taught anything they deemed unimportant. Well, now step back and make that a global project. What is a group of people getting together in this, very small group that for the whole world, how can they possibly know what all of these children need to know to be part of a workforce that doesn't yet exist? And that was the case 100 years ago and 50 years ago. And now it doesn't, 5 years ago, doesn't matter. They couldn't possibly know what jobs are going to exist, not exist. It's that never mind what the individuals want to do, are talented enough to do. etc. And yet they think they can know. And to the extent that they can't know, they're okay with that because they're just going to produce curriculum materials to guide the students, to teach them the things that, once they know them, they might be inclined to think that's all there is to know. Or they might at least be inclined to think that learning anything else would be just as arduous and boring as learning all this garbage. So, what's the point? Yes, part of the point is to get them to think that the process of learning is just goal oriented. Like, I got to get a job, I got to be employed, get a paycheck, move on. I really don't need to know anything else about anything that the government didn't decide I needed to know. And tragically, since the vast majority of us came up in the same system, we have our children and we just automatically buy into that notion of curriculum. Well, certainly the curriculum taught in the schools is the one that's appropriate for my child because the experts picked it, right? Experts at what? Experts at what? Right? So you have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats deciding what the overall purpose of education should be, create a workforce. From that, they decide what this workforce theoretically needs to know and obviously needs to not pay any attention to because you can't teach everything, right? And we're going to standardize that. And then we'll standardize what achievement at learning those things is. And then we will empower and train the requisite sub-experts to go in and teach it, and so on down the line. Now, I've said many times on this channel that at one point in time in America, there was something called a knowledge-based curriculum. So even within all of what I just told you, there still was a notion that, kids coming out of school should know some things, not just be taught some things, but actually demonstrate that they know them before they're credentialed, before they get that high school diploma and go on to that college to be further credentialed. This is all about jobs, right? Well, I think that this workforce needs to make sure they can do a thing or two. And so we had a knowledge-based curriculum. Math, yeah, you should need to know certain things in math. Got to be able to do it. Yeah, you need to know how to read because, got to be able to do it for the workforce. And it's sad to say this because I disagree with this whole premise that that's what education is for, but that was still a far sight better than deciding that education was an equity project and about social justice and not about knowledge acquisition for even working in the workforce. So in 1983, those of you who follow me all the time, and here she goes, 1983, they got rid of the knowledge-based curriculum. Yes, they did. They changed it to a standards-based curriculum. And I'm going to show you today, we'll take a look in the course of events at a standards document so you can see, what is she talking about? What is it? Standards? What does that mean? That sounds good. What would be wrong with standards? Well, because standards have more to do with coverage. It's what the student will be shown or taught, what the teacher or the school will cover in the curriculum. How you do that is all up to you. Okay. As a teacher, as a school, whatever, pick something as long as it aligns with, 3 CBAQ12 standard, whatever, that'll work for us. And who decides whether something does align with that? That's your best guess. I don't know who paid to develop the curriculum in the first place. Maybe they did it. But good luck finding out who to hold accountable for the standards alignment. But that's what that means. Whereas we all know what knows how to multiply 2 times 2. We all know that. We don't need a special expert to tell us that it aligns with a knowledge standard of, 2 times 2 equals 4. We don't need that. We can do that. So they've made the system super arcane, and we then think we need more experts to tell us what to do. And even the teachers feel like, well, this is changing every day. They keep adding new standards, and I'm just a teacher in the classroom. So I don't know. I guess I'll go to the curriculum developer and they'll tell me. They'll tell me what aligns. They'll tell me what to teach. And that's going to be my shortest distance, to being successful in my profession is just everybody's following somebody else. And so we went from having teachers who might have been subject matter experts because they were teaching to knowledge, and they didn't always do a great job then either, but they, better better. And we could shift over to a professional educator who is really much more of an administrator. I mean, they're not a school administrator, they're a classroom administrator, they're a curriculum administrator, in that they know what they're supposed to cover. And then they can go out and, depending on what their school district puts out for resources or allows them to use, which could run the gamut. I mean, anything on the internet, it could be. And they can just pick. They can pick what's easiest. They can pick what they agree with. They can pick what their department head picked, because that's a surefire way to not get fired or, discipline. They can pick what their best friend is using. They can go to teachers, pay teachers, and go, well, that looks good. They're charging me money. It must be worth something. There is not some authority sitting at the school board saying you will use this textbook and you will use these books. They'll give them a list, maybe, but they don't pick the list. They're given the list by the schools, by the teachers, by teachers who got it from NGOs and other people, whatever. And all they do is say, yeah, that's fine. Does it align with standards? Because that's their only job. They work for the district. Does it align with the standards? And how do we have to pay for it? So if somebody comes and says, nope, you don't have to pay at all. It's totally free online. And we've been given it by an NGO, Bill and Melinda Gates, blah, blah, blah. We're getting money, Human Rights Council, blah, blah, blah. We need to do it. It fits into this standard, and this standard. School board didn't pick the standards. They just go, okay, if it fits with the standards and we don't have to pay for it, bonus. Oh, yes, you have to pay for it. It costs this much. Okay, now they're going to look at it more closely. And you might even get to look at it because they're going to have to spend money on it. If it involves hiring a third-party consultant to come in and either bring the materials or the applications or train the staff on how to teach the lessons, then they'll have to discuss it some more. Does it align with standards? Yes, it aligns with the sex ed standards of the blah, blah, blah decided in the committee of the last year. Okay, it does? All right. What's it going to cost? Do we have it in the budget? Okay, fine. Does anybody have any public comment? Yes, this is terrible. Oh, you're a crazy person. Shut up. I mean, this is how the decisions get made. So people come to me all the time. My school board will get rid of this. Good luck. They don't really choose. They're not magic experts at curriculum selection, and they don't go and handpick every book and then tell the teachers what to teach. It's not how it works. They talk about, what they're going to spend and making sure that the teachers are teaching to the standards. And if the superintendent says, yes, we are, if the principals are telling the superintendent, yes, we are, 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, okay, we defer. We're just elected functionaries, and, you say they are, we're not here. They hire the superintendent for the purpose of making that decision. They will listen almost all the time. So I had to set the stage there, because so often it's like, well, let's just get rid of this. It's not that simple. If you get rid of one thing, I'll show you a discrete lesson, for example. I'll hypothesize where the teacher got it. And then you might say, well, they'll tell them they can't use it anymore. School boards don't necessarily have that power. They don't have police power. They don't have judicial power. They don't have any kind of punitive power except with the superintendent. And if somebody wastes money or does something wrong with money, if somebody violates a safety code that puts them in a position of liability, they do have control over that. But they can't just tell a teacher, you can't teach this book. That has to go up the food chain to people with a lot more power, the principal, the superintendent, and even, all the way up to the governor, and somebody might have to make a law. But it just doesn't really work like that. If they're buying the book, they'll say, we're not going to buy the book anymore. And then swoops the NGO to buy it for them. So you've not really done anything. So that sets the stage for you of where does curriculum come from and what's the current project of education in America? Actually, most of the world, Western world, but definitely the United States. And because we do have the 50 states, the one upside for us is that we do have a mechanism for fixing this. Other countries don't. Other countries have much more central control. Our central control is at the state level. It is at the federal level to the extent that if states wanted to tell the Department of Education to stuff it and nullify things like title legislation, IDEA, and all the things that are kind of forcing the state schools to do things the federal government wants them to do, because it's unconstitutional for the federal government to say, you must do this. So instead, they say, you must do this if you want the money. If you want federal funds, you have to do this. But it's it's a zero. That's how often it's happened. The governors have said, keep your money, stuff it. Doesn't happen. And I'm not sure anybody would get elected if they said they were going to do that. And they certainly wouldn't get reelected if they did it. And they wouldn't really get it passed because most state legislatures would say he or she is a crazy person. Get this person out of office. We need those federal funds. So the federal government has a lot more control. People say the federal government doesn't control education. Don't they, though? Really? Okay. Lots of money. Lots of money. The lion's share of funding comes from the state. It does. But there's just enough of a slice of the pie from the federal government that nobody wants to do without it, largely for political reasons, but also for financial reasons, because that is what funds meagerly special ed, title legislation, things like Title IX, Title I, Title VI, et cetera. So there you have it. A lot of it is tied to money and tied to this project of we need a workforce that's going to go out and pay taxes and not complain about it. So here we have what they did. ASP.NET, that is the Associated Schools Network, was founded in 1953 when UNESCO launched a project called the SCHEME, interesting choice of words, of coordinated experimental activities in education for living in a world community. So if you infer from that our schools since 1953 have been a giant petri dish and our children have been lab rats, you would be correct. You would be correct. A lot of what people talk about in terms of pedagogy and, this is how we teach and this is our methodology, it's an experiment. How's it going? How's it going, you guys? Think it's going well? Yeah, no. Anyway, so with the participation of 33 secondary schools and 16 member states, that number has increased, by the way, united around the UNESCO founding principle that since wars began in the minds of men and women, which men and women? Oh, right. People who had lots of power centralized in one place with guns. Okay, let me continue. It is in the minds of men and women that the defenses of peace must be constructed. That word is very important. We live in a time of what's called social constructivism, right? Where people working in our schools and our universities genuinely believe not just that we construct our social mores and things like that, but we literally construct our reality. It's not really real. It's all constructed. That's how you can just be whatever you want because you're constructing it. It doesn't just exist. This is very important philosophically for you to understand. These words are not chosen by accident. All right. The underlying belief of the network, which has 12,000 member schools worldwide, is that they can work together in support of peace, intercultural dialogue and understanding, sustainable development, and quality education. ASP.NET works towards Sustainable Development Goals 4, Target 7, by empowering schools to drive innovation for global citizenship. Now, I've talked about that a lot on this channel, but here you go. What do you have to get rid of for American children to believe they're citizens of the globe and not the nation? What do you think? Right? You kind of have to take a dig at the country as a country, don't you? It'd be pretty hard to raise patriotic little kids. And I don't mean patriotic like America's the best that ever was and everybody else sucks. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the idea of America, the founding principles, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, pretty important and unique. It's actually exceptional on the planet and in human history. And I think I'd like to preserve and protect it. So I'm going to treat it as special, and we're going to teach our children that it is special and not take a dump all over it and say that we really shouldn't have sovereignty and we should sign on to all kinds of international global treaties that destroy our sovereignty and render us not America anymore. I mean, we might be America in name only, but we won't have that Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So global citizenship is big with curriculum, all the way down to the granular level. Sustainability, blah, blah, all more of that stuff. How does it work? ASP.NET is a global network of millions of students, teachers, principals, and wider school communities. They're bringing in that word a lot. Community schools, you're going to hear a lot about that, who are committed to promoting and transmitting UNESCO's values. Wait, what happened to American values? What, UNESCO's values? Did you guys vote for that? I didn't vote for that. What happened to our democracy? Remember our democracy? The one that was in danger? Yeah. from this. It's not really in danger because you don't want porn in the library. Okay. It's in danger because there are a group of people on the other side of the ocean, or maybe in, lower Manhattan, who think that they can sit and decide what values your children should learn. And you weren't asked. Okay. And a team at UNESCO headquarters oversees the network's international coordination, and together with national coordinators, who you also did not elect, and member schools develop global projects, initiatives, and campaigns. Did you know anything about this? Most of you probably didn't. ASP.NET collaborates with UNESCO's regional and field offices, as well as UNESCO networks such as chairs, geoparks, biosphere reserves, and cultural heritage sites, among other partners, to support national coordinators and blah, blah, blah. What are their goals? Schools as laboratories of ideas. I kind of thought that was settled. I don't think we need a laboratory of ideas about, how at least our society should run. But I forgot. We're not a society anymore. We're not a country anymore. We're part of this world, this global citizenship project. So of course they need to use our kids and our schools that we are paying for with American tax dollars as a laboratory for their ideas, not yours and not mine. Empowering schools across the world to drive innovation and transformation and act as living laboratories for global citizenship. Not a project I signed on to. When I had children, I did not sign on to this. Did you? Global networking and collaboration, strengthening international cooperation and collaboration, knowledge sharing, and partnerships between countries and schools. This is a long-winded way of saying stealing your data. Using your kids to generate lots and lots of data that we will then, and using technology that we can then steal because we haven't come up with it on our own, et cetera, but mostly data harvesting. So we can, use that. Capacity building, developing institutional and human capacities for innovative teaching and participatory learning, particularly through whole school approaches. Also a big fancy way of saying community schooling and, spreading out into the private sector through school choice to, increase the capacity for UNESCO to reach more kids. That's literally what they mean. Transformative education, lots of different, not just in the public schools, and whole school approaches, community school. That means they're going to do healthcare, all the things inside the school for quality improvement. Quality of what, though? Quality of what? And increasing uptake within and beyond. This is about their advocacy, increasing uptake of their ideas. So all of this is to say they are working on the project of social engineering around the world, using our children as lab rats for their ideas, trying to change their brains and change the way they think and make them see themselves not as citizens of the United States of America, but as citizens of the world according to UNESCO, whatever their definition of a citizen is. So I had to set that up for you. So then that's very high level. And now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some examples of what that looks like down at the district level. Like, what does it look like? And what does it sound like when this reaches the level of state policy, school policy, and then curriculum? So let's take New Jersey. I tend to refer to New Jersey as the California of the East Coast. I mean, they're almost shaped the same in mirror image, right? So it kind of works. But New Jersey and California have one thing in common. They are all in on this stuff, like all in. Whatever the globalists want, whatever the social engineers want, whatever the social justice people want, they are all in, no hesitation whatsoever. That's not to say that people agree. Certainly, I know people in California who do not, and I know people in New Jersey who do not. Doesn't matter. Their universities, all in. That means their teachers, all in. Their state legislature, all in. Their governors, all in. And even their electoral processes within their states have become so democratic, read communistic, that it is nearly impossible to challenge anybody politically because they're so dominant to one side that even getting on the ballot is nearly impossible. Getting anything, a referendum on, and they have referenda all the time, but it's always on what they want. So it is almost impossible using the electoral system to reform any of this. New Jersey, California are gone. Reform is not happening. If you are lucky, you might get something at like an individual school, maybe a little kind of sort of. You're not getting rid of that. This is the way it is in these states. So every state has an equity plan, thanks to Barack Obama. They all do. New Jersey takes it very seriously, just like California does. Some states, they have an equity plan and it's kind of high level. They do just what they have to do to be aligned with the federal government's, definition of an equity plan. New Jersey, they're constantly evaluating it. We got to make it just so perfect, you guys. So this one, comprehensive equity plan for school years 2019 to 2020 through 22, is the one that was. I'm not going to go into it or look at it much. But then they decided they were going to amend it or going to change it. So they've come up with a new plan, or they have a proposal for a new plan. And that's the thing I'm looking for now, because I was sent their new proposal and I want to make sure I get it, which is the one. Here we go. All right. Here's the new proposed updated equity plan. And I show this to you not to go through, chapter and verse and say, here's what's different, other than they now are going to have an affirmative action officer. Okay. So we have, they shall adopt and implement written and educational equity policies in accordance with the provision, blah, 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 blah. Managing for equity in education. What is equity? Anybody? Want to type it in the chat? It's equal outcomes. It is not, if you are under the impression that it is just, equal access, equality under the law, or anything like that. No, it is not. It is quite the opposite. They want to close all kinds of gaps. They want to make sure nobody ends up higher than anybody else. We've got to have equal outcomes. Thank you, Manalula. That is correct. Equal outcomes is equity. So to that end, they go through all this, the educational equity policies will promote equitable educational opportunity. Again, it's equitable, not equal. So someone somewhere within the New Jersey system is going to decide what fair is, what the opportunities should be to deliver equal outcomes. Someone's going to lose, someone's going to win. That's what that means. Someone is going to decide. I'll leave it up to you to decide how that's going to shake out. Okay. And then it says, and foster a learning environment that is free from all forms of prejudice, discrimination, and harassment based on the protected categories. So if you're not a protected category, you're SOL. You can be discriminated against. That's what that means. Initially, you might think, well, they're hypocrites. They're going to have an affirmative action officer. That's already discrimination. Yes, you're correct. But they get away with it because they say protected categories. Sorry, you're not in one. Therefore, we're well within our made up manufactured rights that we just gave ourselves to discriminate against you. Because equity, because social justice. The board shall inform the school community of these policies in a manner including but not limited to the district's customary methods of information dissemination. In other words, when we get around to it, maybe we'll send you an email that, on a Friday afternoon. So you don't really know what it says until it's too late, and then you can't question it and you're going to have to implement it. Anyway, school community. That's not necessarily parents, by the way. They're last to know about everything. It always surprises parents to know they aren't included in school community. You're not. School community is teachers, superintendents, principals, sometimes support staff, other people like that, but not necessarily parents. You guys are a whole separate category. So the equity policy, you're not going to get a special communication going, guess what, mom and dad, we've now done this thing. And oh, You're just a normie white person? Yeah. Well, you might see some things change and not for the better for your kid that no, they're not going to do that. This will be posted somewhere. Like I said, you might find out about it long after it's done in the fine print and or when it affects your kid. And then they'll refer you to the document. That's usually what happens. But I don't understand what happened. Oh, this is what happened. Um and then we go down to it says the board annually should designate a member of its staff as the affirmative action officer and form an affirmative action team to coordinate and implement the requirements of NJAC 6A7, Managing for Equity in Education. The board shall ensure that all stakeholders know who the affirmative action officer is. This would be the head commissar of equity. Interesting, they're calling an affirmative action officer given what the Supreme Court decided, but I guess because this is a public institute, I don't know why they're doing that. I don't know how they get away with this, but they are. The affirmative action officer shall have a New Jersey standard certificate with an administrative, instructional, or educational services endorsement, et cetera, et cetera. The affirmative action officer shall coordinate the required professional development training for all personnel. All personnel. So now that means that this person is in charge of assigning for teachers, all personnel really, but also teachers, what professional development they'll need to go get. So there you are, 20-year veteran teaching English, and you do great, whatever. Your kid, the students love you, parents love you, but you're now going to be spending your professional development hours learning all about equitable this, that, and the other, gender, something, something, social justice, blah, 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 SEL. Yeah, that's how you're going to spend your professional development time. Not learning how to teach English better. Not other things that might actually benefit your students, but you need to comply with the commissar of ideology, which is this affirmative action officer. So that's just to set the standard of this is the new proposal. Don't know if it's going to get approved. I would say probably yes. It is New Jersey. Pretty much everything gets approved that is completely insane. And I wish I had more time to go through every single thing with you in detail, but we'll never get through what I have. So just again, here we have at the state level, educational equity plan for the state. It is now decreeing what every district is going to have to do. So if you're thinking, I'm going to let the school boards, yeah, their hands are quite a bit tied. All right. So there's that. Then we get to the, here's just one of the schools. Okay. This is an elementary school in New Jersey. And it says rooted in values, growing in knowledge, vision and mission statement. They did a little in this cute. They're wildcats. We're on a journey to inspire leadership, diversity, character. Does that even make sense? We're on a journey to inspire. Okay. We're on a journey to leadership. Okay. We're on a journey to diversity. We're on a journey to character. We're on a journey to achievement, and we're on a journey to thoughtful. Or we're on a journey to thoughtful service. But most of all, to make the world a better place. So before it was get a job, be a taxpayer. Now it's make the world a better place, which, by the way, apparently one can do without ever being employed or paying any taxes. So your new job is being an activist. Your workforce role is make the world a better place. So there you go. That's, their motto is rooted in values, growing in knowledge, whatever. This stuff is so fluff. I promise no place for hate promise. Now, no place for hate is a program that New Jersey schools, not every single one, but most signed on to. No place for hate has its own sort of program that you will do these things and you will, align with these ideas and you will have these kinds of programs and events and so on. I promise to do my best to treat everyone fairly. What does that mean? What does fairly mean? I promise to do my best to be kind to everyone, even if they're not like me. What about if they're a complete a-hole? Do I have to be kind to them? Can I just avoid them? Can I walk away? Can I go down the hall that way? They go that way and we just don't even talk to each other? Apparently that's not one of the options. If I see someone being hurt or bullied, I will tell a teacher. Okay. So we're now telling students not to solve their own problems, not, I see somebody hurt or bullied. Well, we define hurt now as mean words. Someone used the wrong pronoun. Someone said, I like your hair to the wrong person. That could be hurt. That could be bullied. I was informed by a parent a couple weeks ago, and this is in the homeschooling community. So can you imagine how it is in the school community? I was informed that somebody posting an unflattering picture of somebody else's daughter in a completely private Instagram thing, whatever group that only like 7 people saw because it was completely private. And then one of the people decided that it would be a great idea to show it to the person, even though she never otherwise would have seen it. It was not meant to be seen outside of the group, that was harassment and bullying. You can't even vent to your friends. Okay. You can't even privately say a thing because that could be construed as harassment and bullying. And you might say, well, Deb, that's your anecdote. No, I've heard this story from so many people. It's not just me. This happens a lot. So now we're telling them, go tell the teacher. What's the teacher going to do? Because we also hear on the flip side of that is we hear about the kid with the parents. We went 8 times before our child committed, unaliveness. We went 8 times to complain about the bullying. School didn't do anything. But you can bet they'd be Johnny on the spot if somebody used the wrong pronouns. I mean, this is the idea that the schools are fighting actual bullying is completely ludicrous. If it's something difficult to handle, they don't touch it. If it's something easy, like how dare you use the wrong pronouns, they're all over it like white on rice. Everyone should be able to feel safe and happy at school. Well, shoulda, coulda, woulda. This is childhood. Welcome to reality. I want our school to be no place for hate. Well, again, don't we all? But when I talk about restorative justice in a little bit, you'll understand why this is a little bit of a pipe dream. You can have all these wonderful utopian dreams, but if you don't deliver any consequences to people who do things that are actually, counter to that, they're going to get in the way, then, you're going to end up with the worst of the worst. Lord of the Flies. Respect, responsibility, brave. Can we work on grammar, please? Caring and citizenship. Brave doesn't fit the part of speech with the my OCD is kicking in. All right, so that's one example of an elementary school. Then we have, let's see, what is this? Then we have this. This is a news piece from the governor of New Jersey. The Murphy administration announces free 24/7, 365 days digital mental health services secured for New Jersey college students. So you see, they're still taking care of these kids like all the way through college, free. So this is where they think that the state is pretty much the parent of the kids. So now what I'm going to show you is some specific curriculum from this school, or not school, from the state, rather, a school in the state. It's from one school. Let me go back. This is 8th grade, English language arts. Remember, they're very focused on equity. They're very focused on, no place for hate, all that. Keep that in your mind. 8th grade English class. They read something called the in-group. This is in the reading, the in-group. Eve Shalin says, often being accepted by others is more satisfying than being accepted by oneself, even though the satisfaction does not last. In the following passage, Cameron Tuttle explains how her need for acceptance shaped her experience when she was in high school and came to understand, I assume it's a she, how her need, because it says her, came to understand that she was gay. No one bullied me in high school because absolutely no one knew I was gay. Definitely not me. It took me years to figure that out. So this is an English assignment for 8th graders about finding confidence. And goes through, I was one of these, squeaky clean kids, etc. I had to be perfect. I was this on the outside. I worked really hard, etc. I got a lot done in high school, but I didn't have a lot of fun. And even though I wasn't ever bullied by other people, I was relentlessly bullied by my own thoughts and fears about who I was, how I was supposed to behave, and what would happen if I didn't. Now, there's no indication in any of this, by the way, and I did go and look, that this individual who's writing this ever checked in with reality to find out if these expectations were real or imagined. So remember, when you're talking about kids in school, they get their sense of what's expected of them from a lot of different places. They don't just get it from their school. They don't just get it from their parents. They can get it from entertainment. They can get it from social media. They can get it from their own heads. So, we do it. We adults do it. There are so many messages that we give ourselves about what we think other people want from us and expect of us, and we don't always check it out. That's not to say that she was completely wrong, that she wasn't expected to be gay. Maybe that's her perception. But nowhere in this is the idea that maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should check. Some of this is on me. No. Okay. And then she says, I actually had this pathetic idea that I would somehow let down my community, people I barely knew in the conservative, snooty neighborhood where I grew up. Interesting that they select a reading that is specifically described as, somebody from a conservative, snooty neighborhood where she grew up. How many of those really are there? No, really. I mean, I grew up in the Northeast, you guys. I grew up what you might call privileged, right? I grew up and went to school with people from, Greenwich, Connecticut. I didn't live there, but some of those kids went to my school. Certainly they were snooty, but conservative, no. The Northeast has been very not conservative for a long time. And most places that are fairly conservative are not typically snooty. This is a Hollywood thing. Hollywood makes all the rich people Republicans. That hasn't been the case for a very long time. Sorry. It just isn't. I've lived all over the country. So this is like a little fantasy story almost about, a Hollywood version of a snooty neighborhood that's conservative and that she would somehow let them down. And she barely knew them too. So again, nobody's checking in that like maybe you shouldn't be caring about what people you barely know, who you already describe as snooty, what they think of you. Maybe that'd be a good lesson. That'd be a great teachable moment. Should Cameron Tuttle have given two about what these people thought of her? The answer is no. Okay. But let's continue. If I ended up being a lesbian, how ridiculous is that? Yes, it's very ridiculous. Now, bullying isn't just what real people in real time say to you or try to do to you. Bullying is everywhere. It's in the words of fearful, judgmental parents who are trying to control you. Those are real people. Those are in real time. That would be saying things to you. Okay? And it says, by the way, it's also in the words of well-meaning but misguided parents who are trying to protect you from being hurt. Now, this is an 8th grade assignment. Think of the power of this. Think of this. Bullying is also in the words of well-meaning but misguided parents who are trying to protect you from being hurt. No qualification around that. Bullying is in the news and in government policy. Well, I can't really argue with that. It's in the imagery of pop culture. It's in religion. And as a result, it gets into your head. So we're taking the word bullying and we're stretching it. All things I don't like and disagree with are bullying. This is how we get to words equal harm. Now think back to that policy or the school values of if you see someone being hurt, tell a teacher. Hurt, it has a whole new meaning than when we were kids. We were kids, like if you see someone hurt, it's like someone threw a rock at Johnny. I saw so-and-so bite somebody or hit somebody or, call them really awful names. Okay, maybe. But this, bullying's everywhere. It's in all things. All the things I don't like are bullying. You're hurting me. Now you get where it comes from. How did it get better for me? Slowly. It helped that I went to college across the country as far away as I possibly could go from my hometown without needing a passport. So now it's cool to get as far away from our parents, as far away from home. We couldn't possibly get support from our parents if we decide to come out as gay. No, you got to go far away to college. College is where we go to feel safe and not be bullied, unless you're Jewish or Christian or white. Anyway, and okay with that and don't hate yourself. I eventually found the guts to stand up to my inner bully, the judgmental, fearful, bossy voice in my head that kept telling me, you can't, you shouldn't, don't you dare. And then I finally found the confidence to be honest with myself. And then I moved to New York. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh, but this is, imagine being in eighth grade and reading this. So we can laugh at it. An eighth grader is going to take this seriously or not, depending how well they read. But let's get back to the fact that this is an English class. Now, what is the point of this lesson? Let's look at the questions for a clue. How do you define bullying? How does Cameron Tuttle's story add to your thinking? Not, do you agree? Do you disagree? How does it add to your thinking? Let's assume that it should. Because what if the child walks in thinking, now bullying's bullying. This isn't bullying. This is somebody's head playing, mind games with them based on what they're assuming and catastrophizing. This is cognitive distortion on steroids. And now, how does that add to your thinking? Here, take some cognitive distortion. It's good for you. Create an identity chart for Tuttle. What? Wait, what? Hang on a second. Let me go back to that. Create an identity chart. How might the identity chart you made for her be different than the one she would make for herself? What might be some differences between the way others see her and the way she sees herself? Okay, that part is not such a huge problem, but what does this have to do with English? What does creating an identity chart have to do with reading comprehension in terms of any kind of themes? What do we get out of this in terms of writing style? What genre is this? Did this person make her point? Is there anything, what kind of writing was it? No. What is the point of this lesson? Well, it's simply to embed the idea that bullying is something bigger than you thought it was, little kid, and it looks like this. And then what does it mean for Tuttle? I can't read. It's behind something that I can't see because of the slide thing. Anyway, then we have this universe of obligation. And I'm going to take your comments as soon as I finish this slide deck, because I want to see what you guys have to say about this so far before we move on. Universe of obligation. This is a 9th grade lesson. And this is also, I think this is 9th grade. This is also ELA, or it might be 8th grade ELA, and I might have gotten it messed up, but regardless. What does it mean to be a member of a group? In groups, we meet our most basic needs. No. I mean, that's debatable. Let me put it that way. It's debatable. In groups, we learn a language and a culture, a way of life. I don't know. Most people can learn that in the group called family. Family. It is a group, to be sure, but it could consist of a single mom. It could. You can learn language. You can learn to speak your own language from your mother, even if you have nobody else but your mom. By the time you ever darken the door of a school, you're probably speaking a language and a culture and or a way of life. Again, we typically think that we learn these things at home primarily. And we go to school, we thought, to learn the academic subjects that our parents weren't going to teach us for a variety of reasons. Wish they would, but the government had other plans. In groups, we also satisfy our yearning to belong. Notice how they throw out the premise to the kid that they should have that. Our yearning to belong, like it's a given. Now, some would argue that it is. Some would argue that human beings have a natural need to belong. I would debate that. I think it depends. And I think you have to define yearning. I think you have to define belonging. I think there's a lot in there. It's pretty heavy for a 9th grader. We're talking about somebody who might be like 13 years old. That's a pretty heavy group of topics to dive into as a premise. Like, accept this, move on. Receive comfort in times of trouble and find companions who share our dreams, values, and beliefs. This sounds like an argument for tribalism to me. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I don't really look to, never mind the government, certainly not the government, to be teaching children about this. But I don't think that's really what schools should be doing. Now, if you want to pull out of kids, do you think that people have a need to belong? What do you think, child? Why do you think it? What's your evidence? Do you personally? Do you not personally? What if a kid's sitting in the class going, I don't feel this at all? Maybe you know, they're autistic, they're shy, they can't stand all the people in their class, and they have really good reason for not wanting to belong. Who knows? But what if you don't? I don't. I don't have a yearning to belong. As far as receiving comfort in times of trouble, I have individuals that I go to. Definitely there is no group. And as far as finding companions to share my dreams, values, and beliefs, that's called a life partner. That's, my family, etc. But they're trying to orient our kids towards, looking to identify with affinity groups. This is what you would do. You would teach a lesson called Universe of Obligation. And I'm going to show you the curriculum this comes from, by the way. All right. Groups also provide security and protection from those who might wish to do us harm. I got that for myself. It's called the Second Amendment and what I get to have because of it. So when I need protection, I have protection. Otherwise, I probably don't need it quite that badly. But you see how we go from internal locus of control and personal autonomy and self-advocacy and a sense of personal competence to, I have to feel safe. I have to be in a group. Therefore, how a group defines its membership matters. You better fit in. Belonging can have significant advantages. Being excluded can leave a person vulnerable. You don't want to be excluded, do you? This is like culty shit. Sorry. It's gross. Like if my child came home with this, I would be like red marking all over it and sending it back to the teacher. And I'd be like, persona non grata at the school, but that's why my kid doesn't go to one of these kind of schools. How the members of a group, a nation, or community define who belongs and who does not has a lot to do with how they define their universe of obligation. Have you guys ever heard this term, universe of obligation? I haven't. Heard social contract, which is another pile of BS, but this sounds like an order of magnitude worse. Sociologist Helen Fine coined this phrase to describe the group of individuals within a society toward whom obligations are owed, to whom rules apply, and whose injuries call for amends. In other words, the society's universe of obligation includes those people who that society believes deserve respect and whose rights it believes are worthy of protection. We live in the United States. All of our rights are worthy of protection, each and every last individual one of us, yes, including criminals. Their rights are just different if they are found to be guilty. But up until that point, an accused criminal, an accused murderer has the same rights that you and I have. Okay? The due process can, lock them up if there's probable cause, so they don't have that Second Amendment right anymore for a while. They're innocent, they get it back. If they're not, they lose it. But this idea that, there are some people have rights and some people don't, and it's based on obligation. No, we're born with that. We're born with that. So right out of the gate, they are teaching these ninth graders something that contradicts the entire natural rights theory of the United States of America. The kids don't know. They have no idea. They have no frame of reference for that. And I bet you even the teachers don't know. So how are we going to uphold that if this is what they're being taught? Right? A society's universe of obligation can change. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess if you have, a big war or something, or people just forget their own history and stuff and don't defend their rights, it could change. Individuals and groups that are respected and protected members of society at one time may find themselves outside of the universe of obligation when circumstances are different, such as during a war or economic depression. We still have the same rights during a depression. Beliefs and attitudes that are why, God, I'm so sorry. This is they put the little slide deck thing where I can't see it. So I'm going to go look at it somewhere else. All right. Beliefs and attitudes that are widely shared among members of a society may also affect the way that society defines its universe of obligation. For instance, throughout history, beliefs. Let's see. Here we go. It can change. Their beliefs and attitudes about religion, gender, and race have helped to determine which people society protects and which people it does not. And again, they're laying the groundwork that rights are attached to these things. These are not rights that they're talking about. They're just not. Gender, first of all, isn't a thing. Sex is. We do have sex-based rights for a reason, and it took a long time to get them. But they're trying to insert a new kind of right, a new kind of obligation, and which of course will necessarily change the obligation towards women to protect us from men in private spaces. But if you wondered, like, well, how does that get in there? Like, how does that belief come to be adopted by so many young people? Where does that come from? This is where it comes from. I assure you, it's not a one-off lesson. There were lessons upon lessons upon lessons that get in under their skin and into their brains, and they're also not ever challenged. They wouldn't know how to challenge this if their life depended on it. They're not given anything that contradicts this. It's a fair foregone conclusion that universal obligation is good. It's a thing. We all agree. We agree with fine. Although fine uses the term to describe the way nations determine membership, we might also refer to an individual's universal obligation to describe the circle of other individuals that person feels a responsibility to care. And then we get Jonathan Sachs in here for good measure. This is what I'm talking about. David Hume noted that our sense of empathy diminishes as we move outward from the members of our family to our neighbors and society in the world. Traditionally, our sense of involvement with the fate of others has been in inverse proportion to the distance separating us and them. Yeah, as it should be. Of course, we have to respond to our immediate family, but once they're okay, we need to expand the circle. Do we? Do we? Do we need to expand the circle, or is that an option? If I don't expand the circle, what happens? Something bad? Am I in trouble? Can I go, or can I just go my life paying attention to and caring for my family? And if, as long as I leave everybody else alone, don't bother them and don't, hurt them, I'm fine, right? I don't have some obligation to have empathy for anyone else. Not in America, I don't. It's news to me. A larger sense of family is a radical idea, but we get into trouble as a society when we don't see that we're in the same boat. That's a different idea. That's a different idea. Yeah, we could get into trouble if I decide to build a nuclear power plant in my backyard, forgetting, of course, that will have an impact on my neighbors. Or, I want to put a sewage treatment plant right there in the park over there and whatever. Oh, there's neighbors. Yeah, that would be a problem, but we're not talking about that. But kids don't know. A kid can't go through that thought process that quickly. They'll just read it exactly as written. We get into trouble as a society when we don't see we're all in the same boat. All eyes on Rafa. You see where it comes from? Okay. So now I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and read some of what you guys are saying. First of all, thank you all for coming. Hi, Ego Brain. Hi, Crystal. Hi, Deuce Voltage. Just an average man. Good to see you. If the woke DEI teaching worked, test scores would go up. They don't care, however, because they are indoctrinated into creating a cult. That's correct. If it worked, now, caveat, if it worked to do what we thought they were working on, but they're working on a different project, aren't they? They just can't quite figure out how to test for that yet. They're working on it, though. They're coming up with more and more little empathy tests and screeners and so forth. And pretty soon, the tests will look more like that. Mark my words, they will. Leave Them Kids Alone says, thinking on free trips for school board to Castle, Tim Shriver presentations in New Orleans. I'm sure the school boards are very grateful for the trip. Yeah, they do a lot of that. You talk about junkets for politicians and corporate people. Well, school people do that too. They take them to these, come look at our really cool program. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for sharing this. I really appreciate it. And then Leave Them Kids Alone says, I believe UNESCO's definition these days is tied to the made-up sustainable development ideology and for wealth transfer to elitists. Yes, exactly. And Mena Lilith said equal outcomes, but then went on to say, AKA communism. That is accurate. Ego Brain says, I thought it was fairness and justice. Ha ha, just kidding. Couldn't help myself for equity. And Leave Them Kids Alone says, if Fed Ed money is taken, does it tie all districts in a state? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. You don't get to opt out of that. It's because you have your state board of ed or Department of Public Instruction, whatever you guys call it in your state. It's called different things, but there's the state level layer. And then you have your school board, which is district level. And some states have school boards that run, sort of consolidated districts. And, that you don't have an individual school board for every little district if they join together in rural areas, things like that. Sometimes in giant, like Los Angeles Unified School District is, massive. So you'll have massive, powerful school boards. And then you have the little bitty one in, your local suburb or whatever, or county. Most of these are at the county level, not by town, but it really depends on the state. And as I said, they're mostly, they work for the district. So they have to do what the district tells them to do. And they're primarily concerned with overseeing the budget. So paying people and making sure that they're spending money appropriately. They're concerned with contracts for that reason and insurance. So they do have a big say in safety policy. That's why when things like bathroom policy come up, policy about safety, like what kind of doors you're going to have and preventing mass shootings and things, that will be handled at the school board level. But what Mrs. Smith is teaching in her classroom, no, they don't have power over that. They really don't, unless she's teaching people how to make IUDs. Then it's a safety issue. So, Leave Them Kids Alone says, report equity violations of your peers or teachers to the equity officer anonymous hotline. Yeah, they'll do that too. Janny JT says, we're raising wimps. Yes, I would go a little farther and say they're not the classical wimp. They're what we might call a cry bully. Cry bullying is when you have somebody who says, my victim status carries status. It's power to be a victim. So I will cry to punish people I don't like. I will go and say someone is hurting me, someone is offending me, someone is, discriminating against me, someone is harassing me, etc. And generally speaking, if the person's identity chart, right, is full of enough check boxes for victim points, if there are enough marginalized categories or protected categories, as New Jersey would say, they would be believed. 9 times out of 10, they'll be believed. And their crying is evidence enough. Well, the outcome, their perception of hurt is sufficient. You can sit there and say, I never did it. Never happened. I never said that. That never happened. I was never there, etc. And it may not even matter. And at worst, you might have to sit with your accuser and listen to them cry some more. But they're not going to just say, until you bring some evidence. Due process doesn't apply inside a school. It really doesn't. Leave Them Kids Alone says, let's hope Cameron doesn't get messages from Julia, takes a breath, or she may feel the need to transform herself to no longer be gay, but rather become queer and able to get with trans females. I mean, they're reading that too. Or let's hope, or hopefully some 8th graders can smell the BS. I hope. I think there are. I think that can happen. But there's a lot of pressure on these students to not say anything. So if they smell the BS, then they just think adults are idiots, which is not a good outcome. So having our children come into adulthood cynical, frustrated, feeling like they've been wasting their time, feeling like adults are morons and there's nothing important you can learn from adults because you just spent 13 years with a bunch of idiots, that's not a positive outcome. You might think like, oh, well, good, they didn't pick up on the woke messages, but they're left hollow in a very important way. And that's not good either. And they probably think that all learning is just dumb. Okay. T Secret Squirrel. Hi. You're not late. I mean, well, maybe a little late, but not super late. And we have Steve. Castle in California was human trafficking, by the way. Nothing surprises me about Castle. Not going to lie. Ethan, hi. Brilliant cry, but I didn't make it up. I honestly don't know who coined that term, but I use it a lot because it applies. It really does. And Steve says, brilliant, psychopath, sociopath in training, cry bullying. Yeah, it's not It's a, like I said, I didn't make it up. It's just the term. And leaving the kids alone says agree on the cynicism rabbit. Yeah, the whole thing isn't good, Steve. You're absolutely right. Every part of it is terrible. So thank you so far for your thoughts. And now what we're going to do is take a look at the actual curriculum purveyor, if you will, where that obligation thing came from. This is called Facing History and Ourselves. Facing History and Ourselves is very big, very big. They have been around for at least 20 years. They have tons and tons of, they have school and district programs, teaching resources. They have ELA, US history, collections, units, toolkits, lessons, and mini lessons, etc. So if you were under the impression, again, that your state or your district was choosing a social studies curriculum or choosing a history curriculum or ELA curriculum, chances are no. They will likely choose curricula or what they call resources. And this might be one of them. And then, as I said before, it would be up to the teachers or the department head or whoever within the school is tasked with deciding what they want their more novice teachers or their team of teachers or whatever, what they want them teaching, because they tend to want some cohesion within the building. That's not to say that there aren't individual teachers who close the door and do whatever the heck they want. You might have your occasional rogue teacher who's doing something right. I know a couple of them who are still getting away with it. And they're hanging on by a thread, like closing the door and saying, I'm going to teach the book the right way, but it's so challenging for them to do. And they tend to get caught and they tend to get in trouble and they tend to get shoved out. So most teachers do this and they hire for it. So they hire teachers for diversity. They hire teachers to meet their affirmative action quotas and so on. And most of the people they're hiring are coming in from teacher training programs. And we'll look at that a little bit later too, where this is what they learn to do. This is good. It wouldn't occur to them to pick up To Kill a Mockingbird and teach it from their own brain. They will go and find a resource. And one of the most important things for you to understand about things like Facing History and Ourselves is they have a point of view. It is a left-leaning, UNESCO compliant, equity, social justice, blah, blah, blah point of view. That is their worldview. And they can and they do use resources, or meaning like a spine, a base novel or something, or poetry that you might look at as a parent and go, oh, I'm so glad they're teaching To Kill a Mockingbird in my kid's school, or they're teaching Lord of the Flies, or they're teaching it was something that you remember from your childhood and you think that's a good thing. Oh, they're covering the Constitution. That's great. Oh, we're going to be reading, Gettysburg Address. And you might think everything's fine. It's all good. I recognize the name of the thing. But what you don't necessarily understand is that worldview is the lens through which that thing will be taught. Believe it or not, I could probably teach the Declaration of Independence. I can certainly do it with the Constitution through an equity lens and spend my entire day talking about how terrible it is, how outdated it is, how it should have gone out with the horse and buggy. But all you might know is my kid was learning about the Constitution. And they might even come home with, the First Amendment says this worksheet, the Second Amendment says this worksheet. Look at the worksheet and you're like, oh, okay, it's kind of lame. It's not very in depth. Seems a little easy for ninth grade, but okay, at least you're learning the amendments. Terrific. But the conversation in class was all how much it sucks. Or they maybe watched a video that you'll never get to see. That's not in the Chromebook or something like that was from here and or recommended by this, that makes sure that while they covered the US Constitution, they covered it in such a way as to say how much it sucks. So, this is what they do. So if you just go in and take a look at, for example, US history curriculum, about it, flexible resources help you incorporate lessons about apply the themes of democracy and freedom throughout your course. Is it themes of democracy? What happened to individual liberty? Remember that? Then we have ELA resources. learn more about our approach. This is important, by the way, for you. You guys can do this too. Go to your district and find out what are the resources. If you can't find out on the website, because increasingly you can't, you may have to FOIA. And you may have to ask for the list of teacher resources that the teachers in your district are allowed to use. Sometimes they put it behind a login and you have to ask to see it. It didn't used to be. You used to be able to just go in and find them. You'd have to dig and dig and dig and dig a little, but they'd still be there. Well, they got smart and they started hiding things. Our ELA teaching resources and approach are designed to help you create classrooms where students know that they belong and that their voices matter. Is that what you thought English language arts was about? Right? Well, actually, I was wrong. I said 20 years, 50 years. Their approach to humanities education has balanced mind, heart, and conscience, right? Applied to the study of literature and writing, your ELA materials integrate literacy skills development with social emotional learning, that's CASEL, and civic education practice. This is English class. This is English. Wondering why they suck at writing? This is why. They do precious little of it. So now what I'm going to do is bounce back to the presentation that I had because we have some more lesson here. Here's an example. This isn't from them, but it's almost as bad. Okay, so facing history and ourselves where the one about obligation came from, and now you kind of know why. This comes from something called Mark Twain Media Inc. Publishers. And I was shocked to discover, and I went and looked at, where's the Mark Twain stuff? Mark Twain Media Publishers, you can just Google. It's those workbooks. Let me see if I can find it while we're talking. But you've probably seen them a lot. And here, I'll show you. Let me zip to this. Okay, this is... Why isn't this working? Hold on. Okay. So this is Mark Twain Media Inc. Okay. So they have all these workbooks, all kinds of different subjects. And this lesson I'm about to show you about Vladimir Lenin comes from one of these workbooks. And they are so bad. Now, what's bad about them, Deb? Well, how do I begin? It's like junk food. The junk food equivalent of learning, put it that way. Everything is, they try to make everything, compact and easy and answer these 5 questions. And here's a cool picture. There's no connections, no real connections. And the way that they write these things is so oversimplified as to convey messages that are either not true or so matter of fact that you can read into it that they think something is good that is actually terrible, or something is terrible that is actually good. The writing is just terrible. So let me show you an example of what I'm talking about, because you need to see this in context. So this lesson about Lenin comes from one of their workbooks. That means the teacher in this school, and I believe this is 9th grade. So 9th graders really ought to be able to do better than this. Went to one of these workbooks, probably borrowed it from one of the online lending libraries that these workbooks are from. She may not have bought it. She may have just gone to one of their online resources that the school has subscribed to or whatever, and then printed out. You can see how this is sort of printed out, or maybe she had this in a notebook and, from years gone by and printed, made copies. So this goes through Vladimir Lenin, blah, 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 blah. But I pulled out just a couple of points. For the emergency, so we're going to just take it as a given there was an emergency. Strong measures were needed and taken. A new secret police, the Cheka, was organized. Leon Trotsky, real name Lev Bronstein, was second only to Lenin. Trotsky, like Lenin, had served time in Siberia, was in exile in New York when the Russian Revolution began. Joining the Bolsheviks when he returned to Russia, he soon became Lenin's comment. So they just go through this like, well, there needed emergency measures like secret police. So we formed secret police, but, okay. Just a weird way to teach Lenin to 9th graders who are perfectly capable of learning more about Lenin. I mean, even over oversimplified history on YouTube does a better job. You go look it up. Oversimplified Russian Revolution. It's fantastic. But when they talk about Lenin, they deliver the real Lenin. This makes Lenin look like a little freedom fighter. If you read it from the beginning, it's like, well, and he wanted a revolt for the workers. Okay. Then we get down here. A variety of enemies face the Bolsheviks. Not people oppose them, enemies. So you're a kid, you're reading this, go, enemies are bad. Can't have enemies. So a variety of enemies face the Bolsheviks, including the Germans, Mensheviks, and right-wing factions forming armies to oppose a communist takeover. Right-wing factions. Now, our kids today, I don't know when this was written, but a thoughtful teacher, a caring teacher, a teacher who actually wanted the kids to learn something real about Lenin and not try to stoke something, would not use this lesson, because she would say, yeah, right wing means very different things today. These kids are hearing that term all over the place. It's on social media. It's everywhere. They're in ninth grade. They think right wing equals, well, pretty much all of us. Okay. And you wouldn't use this lesson if you had half a clue. So I'm led to wonder / conclude that the teacher chose this intentionally because it says right-wing factions, opposed a communist takeover, because remember, their goal is to make communism look better than it actually looks. And then we keep going through, their armies defeated the White Russians. Yay, plucky commies. Anyway, the whole thing, if you wanted to go and read it, does not make Lenin look any worse than, I don't know, one of the founding fathers. So that's a problem for me. Then we have this worksheet, Economic Systems Survey, which, by the way, you don't get the information from that reading. It's there either was something else that they were taught, or I don't know how you would evaluate this. The direction said, decide if you agree or disagree. Now, that would actually be an interesting lesson, spark a lot of conversation. That might be a lesson I would do as a teacher, because I want the kids to hash it out. Even in ninth grade, do you agree that property and the means of production should be owned by businesses and individuals? Yes or no? And we could even have, we could do a little debate where one person stands up to say yes, one person stands up to say no, and you're not allowed to yell at them or anything, but you just have to, challenge what they just said and so on. You could teach a great critical thinking and debate session that way. But no, we're just going to put in whether something is capitalism or socialism, C or S. The teacher changed the rules. That's what C stands for. That's what S stands for. And so they use the agree and disagree to say just what it is and what it isn't. So property and the means of production should be owned by businesses and individuals, capitalism, not socialism. When individuals follow their own self-interest, progress will result. Well, capitalism says that. Socialism doesn't say that. Just a true or false. Is there anything qualitative being communicated to these students? No. Do you think they're going to remember most of this? No. Are they getting to have a conversation about what they think? No. They're just identifying which is which. Not very good. And then this is unrelated, but I'm showing it to you because it's the same district. Big sheet. And I think I shouldn't say it's unrelated. It fits with the obligation lesson. 8 considerations for your classroom at Ramadan. Hey, teacher, you have 8 things you're obligated to do for your in your classroom for Ramadan. I'm genuinely curious if this existed for Passover back in April. I'm going to go with probably not. Probably not. I'm pretty sure the parent who sent me this would have sent it to me because she would have been thrilled. So she wouldn't have left that out if this existed for Passover or Easter. But Ramadan, definitely. Okay? Make your students feel seen. Be mindful, be flexible, eating and drinking, private space, be respectful. Oh my God, go to a madrasa. It's a public school. The public school is not there to do all of these things to make your religious ritual easier to celebrate while you're at school. I grew up Jewish. You don't eat leavened bread during Passover season. You don't, your there's other things that you're not supposed to do. Nobody gave a crap. Nobody even talked about it. You'd show up with like a matzah sandwich and nobody's, you might get picked on. There was no like, make your students be seen, be mindful of a private space, blah, blah, blah. Seriously? Nor did we expect it because it's public freaking school. But, and that is all in the context of these kinds of results. How are the students doing in this wonderful school? Well, 51.2% are below the state result in mathematics. I'm sorry, in English. And then mathematics, they are 34.6 percent below the state. So, that's how well that works. That's how well that all works. Anyway, so getting back to our wonderful Mark Twain media, that's what that was. That the lesson came from there, and then the prior lesson came from facing history in ourselves. So now I'm going to jump to, we've gone through New Jersey. Now I'm going to show you, where's the other one? Okay. Now we're going to bounce on over to Kansas. We just talked about a blue state. Thought it might be important to take a look at what is ostensibly, people walk around going, it's a red state, isn't it? There's no such thing, but okay. When it comes to education, it really is, the blue are just way farther ahead, but it doesn't mean that the red are in a really good place. Even in Florida, the teachers union, everybody are fighting tooth and nail to work around the governor. So it's an uphill climb. A parent sent this to me. This is summer assignments for high school students. Following summer 2024 assignment documents are provided for Olathe High School students enrolled in selected advanced courses for the 2024-2025 school year. Click on the accordions below to download and complete required work for courses in various subject areas. Course assignments may be the same for all students, district-wide or school-specific as indicated. Teachers will communicate any expectations, etc. Language, arts, and composition. So then they go by certain schools. What this likely indicates, as I said, is that the teaching team for that department, for AP, whatever, has decided, and they most likely, I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt, have decided based on the composition of their AP student body. They know who's going to be in the class. And they know how many, and they know what they can cover in a certain amount of time. So let's say you have an AP class and it's got 30 kids in it, and they're all like barely able to do the AP work. Like, remember, they're trying to get more kids into AP because equity. So maybe you pick books that are, a little less challenging, whatever. So my guess is rather than having a one standard one for all the schools, they're changing them up. They may also, another consideration, they may also be doing it so that the students can't cheat, sell stuff on the internet. Who knows? There are many, many reasons why a different school will do different things, starting with different teaching teams. They just are adept at teaching different materials. So that's very, very possible. So I'm going to look at, I'm trying to think of which one I want to look at. See if I can remember which school the parent sent it to me for, because this comes to me from a parent specifically, and I want to get this right. All right, let's see if I was even told. Okay. This says, all right, here's what I got is from the parent. I've noticed an unmistakable trend in the public high schools towards trauma lit and liberation theology for honor students. The Poet X or Poet 10, I don't know, for ninth grade. Some children in ninth grade are 13 years old. Surely the teachers cannot all be ignorant to the inappropriate ideology and low reading levels. So this must be one of the books that is just, they're putting it at a very low reading level, also inappropriate material. Haven't gotten through them all, but so far I don't see any classics in the bunch. One school doesn't even list their books, only found through the portal. Interestingly, they are spending an unknown sum to destroy the perfectly functional boardroom. Don't know what that means. Not sure if it's paid for with the board or ESSER funds. That's money from the federal government. I only saw approvals for new chairs. They've not explained funding. In addition, the district has rebranded, taking away the world map in its logo, switching to the attached. Comparisons have been made by some. We have a student graphic designed. Let's see. People are not pleased with the use of funds to do this. They say things will only be replaced as they are used up. So in other words, they're doing for redecorating and all kinds of things. School board meeting an existing committee, attempt to remove primaries for school board elections. They're trying to change how school boards are elected. This is all happening here, but I'm not sure which school. So let's just take a look. Okay, so see what they do here. Let's take a look at this one. All right. Choose and acquire. Oh, well, what do you know? Factfulness, 10 reasons we're wrong about the world and why things are better than you think. That might be okay. David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants by Malcolm Gladwell. Okay. Or Poverty in America by Matthew Desmond. Then they tell them to write summaries. Okay, so that's that one. And then there are little summaries of the books. Let's go back and see what other choices we have. This one is for the North High School. Same book, David and Goliath, Heartland, a memoir of working hard and being broke in the richest country on earth. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, Into Thin Air, Nickel and Dimes on Not Getting By in America. You guys seeing a theme here? America sucks. Can't get by in America. Yeah, I wonder why that is these days. Pretty sure they're not going to have the same conclusion you and I would have. And we go through there. Now let's see what's another choice. I'm going to go down to, let's try this one. This one has, where are the books? Okay. A lot of writing stuff. Not seeing any books. Maybe I'm missing that. Language and composition. Here, literature. Let's see what this one has. To ensure a successful beginning next year, we'll read The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, winner of the 2020 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. Okay, it's a Pulitzer Prize winner. That's good. This is quite a high degree of variance, actually. This is much higher variance than I'm used to. I'm used to like, we're going to pick, a range, but this is really different. What's this one? This one has them watching documentaries. What? Okay. Supersize Me. Alrighty then. So there's that. Summer assignments, language arts assignments. These are all AP. That was AP. And then we have honors English on down. Honors. I'm curious what honors 10th grade. Oh, look. Dystopian literature. I'm still not seeing a book. I'm probably missing something. That's still more curriculum description than I see usually for parents to be able to see, but it is a summer assignment, so the parents have to oversee it. Lots of negativity. And to her point, no classics. Now, if you're wondering why no classics, the obvious answer is we are decolonizing the curriculum. Got to do new stuff. Old stuff bad, new stuff good. The problem with that, a lot of people have asked me, well, what's wrong with that? Why don't we want to update it for modern audiences, et cetera? Well, because part of the point of teaching the classics is there are universal, timeless themes. Also, possibly more important, that reading is challenging. It's not written for a modern audience. The vocabulary will be challenging. The sentence structure will be challenging. That may be the only chance these kids have to encounter literature they would not choose for themselves but might end up loving, that will broaden their mind, improve their vocabulary, increase their knowledge of history, because almost all of it is written in an historical context. And you get to cover a lot of ground in one book. So there's a lot of reasons to read the classics and teach the classics. If you're going to say we're decolonizing it because it's not modern, that's not an answer. Why is modern good? Why is modern better? If the students are likely, if they read at all on their own time, to choose modern books, which they are, why do they need to do it in school? Isn't school the place where you get to read things you wouldn't choose for yourself? Isn't that the point? So that has gone out the window. All right. So, oh my God, I just thought this was funny. One of the job postings I saw on Indeed had a little note: people with a criminal conviction encouraged to apply. And then Ethan Harris says, may contain ingredients that cause cancer of the brain. Oh my goodness. All right. So that's Kansas. Then moving on to, okay, those were all the different things. Now what I'm going to do is show you some curriculum that I found. And then we're going to move from here. After I get done with this like little English thing that I'm going to show you, we're going to move on to things like math, science, sex ed, whatever. We'll go through some more stuff. I'll try to go to faster clip. I was searching for more curriculum to show you. And I was going through Twitter and looking up, curriculum that's in use and getting a lot of notice and so on. And I found this. I found open up resources being used all over the country. And I thought, okay, what's this? Where's this come from? Curricula Tools, founded in 2015. It was founded as the K-12 OER Collaborative 13-state initiative to address quality gaps in the curriculum market. So what you need to understand is there are a lot of companies out there making curriculum. They're not like it used to be. Houghton Mifflin makes textbooks and the district buys a textbook or has a textbook written for them and they adopt it. And, it's a big expensive thing. Now you've got all these private corporations developing curriculum that they make accessible to schools, sometimes for a fee and sometimes not, depending on how they get their funding. So rather than having to go to a district or go to a state and say, hire us to make your curriculum or buy curriculum for us and sending a little salesman out like an encyclopedia salesman to sell the curriculum, they can now, because things can be delivered online, they can sell contracts to use their online resources. It's, that they can update the resources every other week if they want to add more, whatever. And the districts are more inclined to them to store books. They don't give the books to kids. Everything can be delivered electronically, et cetera. Or if they don't have big bucks in their district, they can get this stuff donated by people like this. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? Helmsley Charitable Trust, Schusterman Family Philanthropies, Robin Hood Foundation, Hewlett Foundation, and so on. Sometimes you'll find them it's the Tides Foundation, who helped to organize the college protests and so on. So curricula are finding their way into the school, curricula that obviously supports the goals of those types of foundations who love UNESCO. It can find its way into the school for the simple reason that it's cheap. It's easy. It's not cheap for these guys make a lot of money, but it's cheaper than adopting and storing a lot of textbooks that you then have to pay to update and so on. Usually with a textbook, if you're going to put in that expense, you have to go through a whole adoption process. That's very cumbersome. And you have oversight and people get to comment. They might be using this and 5 other resources and you parents will never know. And they might be using this and 5 other resources in a given day and you'll never know. And what does it look like, you might wonder? Well, I went and decided to look. I said I gave them my email and signed up as a teacher. Try to look up what's going on. Discovering our topic. By the way, this is 5th grade. 5th grade. English. Human rights. Do you guys remember learning human rights in 5th grade? Was that, a thing for you in 5th grade? Not really for me. But anyway, so what does that look like? What does a human rights lesson for 5th graders look like? Well, it looks like this. That's interesting. Can you guys hear me? I hope you can hear me. Okay. So this is discovering our topic, human rights. Grade 5 module unit lesson. It says the purpose of today's lesson is to participate and further the topic protocol by engaging with the text. They're reading Esperanza Rising, which is a good book. And then it says, develop discussion norms, maybe a sensitive topic, module overview, etc. They go, this is for the teacher. This is for the teacher. That's the perspective that I took. One thing I want to call to your attention is they tell you so much. So I'm a teacher and they're telling me there are many important active learning protocols in EL that you and your students will learn in this first lesson. Students will use 2 protocols, think, pair, share, and infer the topic. So they're literally telling the teacher exactly how to teach it and what to pull out of the students and so on. It's plug and play. So, each lesson consists of an opening, a work time, a closing time, a homework assignment. This is very formulaic. Teachers tend to love this. Not me, teacher, but a lot of other teachers, because having the pattern makes your teaching easier. And they say, and more effective, but more effective at what? More effective at getting all the kids to do all the same things at the same time. Is it effective at getting the kids to actually think, to truly engage with the literature? No, it is not. Because you're telling them what to do and what kind of thinking to do at every turn. So, and that's with a human rights lesson. It's going to narrow the field of ideas that the students can engage with during this lesson. And it's about human rights in 5th grade using a piece of literature. Now, to be fair, I haven't read Esperanza Rising. I have it on the shelf back there. I have not read it. But when I read the jacket and so on, when I bought the book to put in my library, it didn't strike me as that's the theme of the book. It could be used for that. Just like, as I said, I could use the Constitution to teach about the evils of slavery if I wanted to. That's not the point. You might see your child reading Esperanza Rising and think, oh, this is good. You might even look through the book and be like, this is a pretty challenging book. It looks good. And I'll read the back of it. Oh, okay, fine. And then you don't know this is happening in the classroom. Okay, so there's that. Then what was the next thing I was going to do? Let me go through and find it. I'm going to stop screen share for a moment because I had lots and lots of other stuff to show you. Where did I put it? This is the problem with organizing one of these is I have so much junk. Okay, so the next thing I did, probably unwisely, but all right, here we go. The next thing I did is I have a pro account on X. And so I put together different columns of material based on what subject it is. Restorative justice, math. I don't have much in the way of math, so I'm just going to go to that one first to show you what this looks like and see if I can open it up. All right. So we have this culturally responsive STEM lesson plan, examining racial diversity across districts in U.S. states. We're talking about a STEM lesson plan being culturally responsive. How does race affect a student's math education? Now, we've covered equity math on this channel before, but this is just to show you how some of this stuff works. Lesson activity, show a clip or show example, ratios, part to whole. And they're showing like neighborhoods. Have the students read a Washington Post article. Using Explore Your School District tool, students should be provided time to play with the tool to explore data of 4 school districts. How is this teaching math? It's probably teaching politics. It's probably teaching, things are unjust and terrible. They're teaching ratios this way. Do you know how hard it is to teach kids who don't have a firm grasp on basic math? Ratios, statistics, never mind what they mean. So they'll be taught statistics when they don't understand the baseline math, in all likelihood. I've seen the scores. And then this ratio of Black to white students, ratio of Hispanics to white students, ratio of Asian to white, as if this is important to the student. Why is this important in math class to the student? Racial diversity lesson continuation, and so on. And we have more. Students will demonstrate their understanding of the diversity of backgrounds, talents, interests, and goals of African American and women scientists who have made important contributions to science. I hope I don't have to go through this anymore than I already have, because I'll just get mad. All right. So that was that. And getting back to the next one, ELA and social studies. I put together a whole bunch of stuff. Let's see. I'm just going to pick the best, I think. What do we have here? This is a district. Says her district has a $111,120 contract with ethnic consulting firm LESMC that produces model lessons that include a land acknowledgement for Palestine and ancestor acknowledgement to Edward Said, a renowned anti-Semite. LESMC also promotes the very controversial Teach Palestine curriculum and BDS. This is a critical media literacy toolkit. Let's see if this opens up. This was on Parents Defending Ed. If you're not already following them, and Ryan Stahey, you should be, because they cover curriculum like crazy, and way more than I could ever keep up with. Coalition for Liberated Ethnic Studies. I mean, they're spending over $100,000 putting this stuff into schools. So there's that. Then it says Berkeley Unified School District of California. You're probably like, yeah, okay, Deb, it's California. They're doing this stuff all over the country. There's the land acknowledgement. Alrighty then. So then we go down to 8th grade social studies. This year, like every year, we'll be covering the topics of race, slavery, and current issues like we've done in the past few years. The 8th grade social studies department will be reading a book dealing with these topics. The book Stamped from the Beginning came out in 2016, and Kendi, right? So there's that. An Indigenous Peoples History of the United States for young people. 8th grade social studies. An Indigenous Peoples history. Bad enough we have a Peaceful history from Howard Zinn. Now we have an Indigenous Peoples history. When are they going to get around learning the history? Like the core stuff you absolutely need to know. You can learn this stuff if you want, I guess, some other time. Then let's go back to, I told you we'd talk about restorative justice. This is Madison Public Schools, has several restorative justice and SEL coordinators, managers, curriculum developers, each paid over $100,000. And this one, let's see if we can see this in here. So this goes in and shows like the amount that they're paid, the wellness planner, the SEL curriculum developers, to tier 2 SEL developers, spending a lot of money. Next time they tell you your schools are underfunded, take a look at that. Montgomery County School spends over $1 million per year on consultants trying to sell the latest fad about equity grading, restorative justice, or whatever other failed idea. Look at these: extracurricular salary, other non-position salaries, $13 million. Consultants, $1 million. But even I'm looking up here. I'm looking at these other non-position salaries. And then we have, whereas on June 21st, 2022, the board adopted a resolution that committed $600 million of general fund ending fund balance for the Student Equity Needs Index. The $600 million was committed for sending allocations of $300 million, blah, 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 blah. Money, 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 money. Lots of people making lots of money. And the last thing is, let's see. Of course, we know there's all kinds of Black Lives Matter in the school for teaching activism. Woke kindergarten, you've probably seen on the internet. If you haven't, you need to go look at it. It's crazy. This woman is the woman who says that the United States has no right to exist. It's woke kindergarten, San Francisco. Then there's a whole thread of teachers performing about how excited they are to be out in their schools and in their classrooms. This is a lesson I showed you guys from New Jersey. about discussing your lunch and how we can be an ally and stand up for others at lunch based on what food is in your lunch. Lunch equity. No, I'm not kidding. All right. And remember, we talked about teacher education. Columbia's education course offerings for prospective teachers: no science of reading, no classroom management, no curriculum development or instructional design. But there's youth resistance, social constructionism. Remember, we talked about that. Student and teacher activism, BLM at school, critical pedagogies, and of course, Pella Frere. Very important. So if you're wondering, like, who's picking all this curriculum material and why are they picking it and where is it coming from? That's why. Okay. Here, Daniel Buck says you should follow him, by the way. He wrote a book called What's Wrong with Education. It's excellent, but he's on Twitter. I'm trying to access LGBTQ curriculum materials in Massachusetts, but I can get to them only through filling out a form and will likely be denied. It should not be this difficult to access the curriculum materials in our publicly funded school. This is a red flag. This is happening more and more. You want to see what it is? You can't. Give us your info. Yep, page not found. This I discovered because I tried to find this material that Laura Powell posted about comprehensive sex ed. I clicked on the link that she posted back in, I think, March, and this is the page you get now. So they've hidden it. I don't think they've gotten rid of it. I think they've hidden it. So there's that. And then speaking of comprehensive sex ed, Planned Parenthood is pushing into, well, that's Toronto, so that's not the United States. So let me go back to something that is the United States. Let me close this out. This is what Laura was talking about. This is from Amaze. Amaze, parents, is a website that your children are being referred to within their school, in their sex ed. The kids are being told, go to Amaze and watch videos. They don't necessarily show the videos in the school. Yay. But they recommend to the kids to go watch them. So if you're not paying very close attention to what your kids are watching on a channel that is, for them, if you try to go on, by the way, a thing will pop up, I believe, that says, go back now, like, click the easy exit. So in case parents walk in. But this particular one, this video is too offensive to post a clip. This is from Amaze YouTube channel. The school encourages children to check out. It depicts a cartoon child doing what the title of the video indicates while watching some on his computer. It's about porn. And this was recommended to students. This woman says, amazing that the school district is looking into not using May's videos anymore after she sent screenshots of the 6th grade assignment. So the teacher made the assignment. The parent got upset, sent this email with screenshots that depict somebody making out with tongues, a little girl looking at porn, somebody discussing oral sex, a young boy with an erection. These are in the pictures, screenshots from the videos. 6th grade. So after this, she received something saying, that they were looking into getting rid of using Amaze, but how long had it been there and how many kids had seen this stuff? And that's her school. Other schools are still using it. No problem. They don't have a problem with it. They're rating this stuff, Amaze, they're rating it for ages 10 to 14. 10-year-olds learning about porn and all of that. As far as other comprehensive sex ed stuff, I'm going to switch from sharing this to another screen because I got something. Where is the thread? Hold on one second. Here we go. This entire thread from Ramona Bessinger. Okay, it's just a whole thread. The K5 Oregon, North Kingstown. This is North Kingstown. This is in Rhode Island, but they are following Oregon standards. So this is another thing to be aware of, is that your state might take a shortcut and follow another state's standards. They just cheat. Like, we don't want to go through the trouble. Look around. Who's doing things we like? Okay, let's use theirs. So their Oregon School Board is what they're following. She asked to see all the content. The curriculum director refused to let her see it and refused to show their parents. So she found it anyway. The Great Body Shop K-6 curriculum platform is filled with developmentally inappropriate content. And this is what they're hiding. Okay. So it goes through K-5. They approved this content. Here's the Great Body Shop. Grade 4. Identify human reproductive systems, including anatomy and function. Grade 4 is a little young. Little young for that. Hormones and reproductive organs. It's not like lewd, but it's a bit young. Identify. Okay, so then they go through all this other stuff. Now we have grade 3. Wait, what? We're even younger now. Grade 3, define gender expression, identity, and sexual orientation. They're 8. Show how tolerance and respect for individual differences. Whoa, what? Define sexual orientation in grade 3. Recognize differences and similarities in how individuals identify, et cetera, et cetera. This goes on. Kindergarten. Name reproductive body parts. Okay. I didn't do this in kindergarten. Did you? I sure didn't. List potentially unsafe body fluids and objects to avoid. This is a big problem for your average kindergartner. Now, sure as I'm sitting here, there's going to be somebody out there going, not everybody lives in a has good parents, and some kids need to know this because bad things. Very true. I'm not going to dispute that. The question isn't, are there kids who might need this or benefit from it? That's not the question. The question is it the proper function of the government school to make the determination that all children should be learning this at the same time because maybe some might benefit from it? How many not only don't benefit from it, but are freaked out by it, scared by it in some way, like I don't want to use the word trauma because that's a bit much, but let's just say creeped out by it to a level where they're very uncomfortable. They're talking so much about safety at school and feeling safe and feeling included and feeling good about going to school. Now your little 6-year-old, there's some bodily fluids that are dangerous and you shouldn't come in. Now, if this is not your world, guys, then this is not your world. We don't need to be like wrecking the innocence of every child because some children might benefit from it. They also might not. Our government is making a lot of assumptions about the children who don't live in, posh neighborhoods. And they're also making a lot of assumptions about the kids who do. Sometimes you teach kids about these topics too young. They normalizes them. They think this is all totally normal to look at body parts of other people. So when some grown-up adult wants to show me their body parts and tell me this not is totally normal, they're less inclined to listen to what was pre-programmed into their little body to be kind of freaked out and afraid of this stuff because some adult who isn't mom and dad was showing it to them. So I'm just putting out there for you guys to think about that. The question isn't, could somebody somewhere maybe benefit? The question is this the proper role of the school? Is this what they're supposed to be doing in kindergarten? What happened to play? Be a kid. Grade 1, describe ways to prevent communicable and non-communicable diseases, including HIV, AIDS, and hepatitis B. Are there many first grade orgies? Are we doing a lot of intravenous drugs in first grade? What? Just let them be kids. So this goes through. This is what they're, Oregon alignment. This is what they're using in Oregon. And there it is. So that's what Ramona reported to us. And then, if that wasn't enough, we have the sex ed store for teachers. Did you know this existed? Welcome to the sex ed store. So this is a store where teachers can buy books to learn how to teach sex ed in their classes and featured manuals. Oh, perfectly well approved by Planned Parenthood. Representation sex education, cultivating diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in sex ed. They're going to cram this garbage into every conceivable corner of your child's day. There is no peace for these children. It is all sex, all queerness, all the time. By queerness, I mean everything that isn't what was. Everything that isn't what you and I might call normal is queer. It doesn't have anything to do with sexual orientation. It doesn't have anything to do with gender. It's just what Mao might have called getting rid of the olds. Positive images, game on, great mentoring, sex ed kits. Unequal partners. This is role playing, by the way. This one, unequal partners, has little role playing exercises where the teacher assigns different kids in the class to play sex partners. Now you're going to ask this one for oral sex, and you're going to decide how, if you want to have it. You guys, you're playing this person, you're playing that person, and they're literally acting out these conversations in school. Do you think it's appropriate for other adults that you don't know to be having these detailed conversations about sexual relationships with your minor teenager? I don't. What is wrong with these people that they want to talk to our children about sex this much? But this is all over the school. Okay. So that's comprehensive, and I'm like whizzing through this. This is not even close to, the whole story. I touched briefly on restorative justice, but this is something that was sent to me about it. As you can see, this is We Are Teachers, ideas and inspiration for reaching the next generation. Teachers use these sites, you guys. They use these. Part of why they use them is that these sites heavily market to teachers. They're on social media a lot. They give out things for free resources, free lesson plans. They kind of pull the teachers into their space to get information, free printables. Look at this. We have free printables, you guys. You put up all over your classroom. So if your DEI director, your equity officer, your affirmative action officer, whoever is going around doing an equity audit or checking out your classroom, and then, I noticed you don't have a lot of things representing, restorative justice on your walls, and you need to get some more. It's like flair. You need to have 17 pieces of flair. Did you notice so-and-so's classroom has more flair? Whatever. So teachers put this crap up all over the place. If you can get it free, look, I'm doing it. They told me how to do it. And I'm doing it. This is teaching, right? So free stuff. And teachers do use it. So it says most schools use punitive discipline systems. Interesting choice of words. Punitive. What we used to call consequence-based discipline. Consequence. You do this, there is a negative consequence because it's against the rules. Break a rule and you're punished with detention or even suspension. Yeah, but that's a consequence. You broke the rule. But these systems can interrupt a student's education and lead to further bad behavior. Whoa, that's a giant leap. Wait, that's a huge leap. The cause and effect has not been established. Could also lead to less bad behavior, right? When you get punished for something or there's a negative consequence, it does lead to you thinking twice about whether you want to do that again, unless you're a sociopath or unless it's a cry for help. I'm going to keep doing the bad thing and keep getting a negative consequence. And then it would be on the adults to go, what's going on with this individual? They've had the negative consequence before and it's not dissuading them. So now we have to dig a little deeper and do some work to address what is wrong in this child's life. But for most people, if you screw up and you get detention, it sucks. You don't want that again. I had detention exactly one time in 9th grade. I cut art class to go talk to my friends in the library. I'd already finished my project. In my defense, I was bored and everything else to work on. And I got the hall pass to go to the bathroom. I just didn't come back. I kind of stayed. I ducked into the library, talked to my friends, and I was gone for like 20 minutes. And I got detention. It sucked. I didn't do it again. Now you might think, well, that's a pretty low key rule violation. Yes, it is. But that's a perfectly appropriate punishment for that. I didn't do it again. You could get detention or suspended for other things, but we didn't have a lot. We didn't have violence in my school. We didn't have a lot. That was the worst thing you might do. You cut a class. Yeah, you're out of the room where you weren't supposed to be, but just kind of like talking to your friends. Nothing major. But you let people believe that there are no consequences. I can just do whatever I want. And we're going to have a chat. Here, have some potato chips. Some schools are trying restorative justice instead. Here's what you need to know about it. This is very misleading. A tale of two schools. Carlos had a heated argument with his parents before leaving for school, so he's running late. Let's see the difference that restorative policies and practices can make. Zero tolerance. He's greeted by metal detectors and a police search. Well, that would be probably a good idea if there's a lot of weapons coming into the school, but all right. His teacher scolds him in front of his class. Well, that teacher's a jackass. That has nothing to do. That you talk to the teacher. Why are you scolding him in front of the class? He comes in, gets seated. As long as he's not disrupting anybody, after class, you have a chat. Or maybe if there's a lull in the instruction, you go over and say, what's up? Why were you late today? Okay. Try to be on time tomorrow. If it starts to become a chronic problem, you deal with it then. What happened to judgment? What happened to just using your own noodle as a teacher, as a principal, as anybody else, and just like dealing with these kids on an individual basis? Both of these have zero accountability for the adult or the child. It's just like, if I just follow this procedure. On the other side, teachers and administrators welcome him and his fellow students as they enter. Okay, something wrong with that. His teacher waits until after class to speak with him to learn more and sets up a meeting with the school. This is overkill. Sets up a meeting with the counselor. Why? I'm fine with waiting until after class. Why do we need a counselor involved? He had an argument with his parents. I wouldn't even offer that unless it became a chronic thing. Student peer mediators and support staff intervene. Oh, so now he's late for next period. He's getting into a fight. Okay, so now we have more stuff. He gets into a minor altercation in the cafeteria. Student peer mediators and support staff intervene, have students sit down together and de-escalate the situation. How much time over here is taken away from everybody's day? How many staff members, how much time out of class, and what's the message for Carlos? If I get in a fight, I'm going to have a conversation. We're going to go have peer meeting. All these people are going to take time out of their day to minister to me. It's a lot of control. It's a lot of power in Carlos's behavior. Now, I am not saying that jumping straight to the worst possible punishment is also the only other way to go, but that's how they present it. That's why I said it's misleading. This false binary. I love how these people love binaries, except where there is a binary. Have you noticed that? Sex is the only binary they don't believe in. But everything else is our way or the worst possible thing that could ever happen in the world. Scolding in the kid in front of the class. School police officer detains and arresting both students. Wait, whoa. I need so much more context here. A minor altercation could be like, fuck you. Now, if somebody assaulted someone else, there is an assault and it's a fist fight. Maybe the resource officer needs to get involved. If nothing else, to let these boys know that this is classified as assault. You could be arrested. If you were in the outside world, you would be arrested. They're in a school. You have a little bit more leeway. So we're going to deal with it a little differently here now, today. But this can't go on. This isn't happening again. If the other guy, if you hauled off and punched him and he wants to press charges, then I gotta arrest you. Or I gotta detain you. But if you guys can work it out, that would be preferable. Let's try to work it out. What is wrong with that? Why do we need to get counselors and mental health practitioners and a student peer group and other blah, 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 blah? First of all, what with student peer mediators? Blind leading the blind. What do they have to do with this? They weren't involved. So this is restorative justice. We're gonna like builds relationships. No, it doesn't. Strives to be respectful to all. Strives is doing a lot of work there. You're not respectful to a victim. If somebody is assaulted in the cafeteria, especially if they didn't do anything to provoke it, they just exist. And I've seen it happen. I've seen video of this happening. So a kid, Jewish kid wearing a Star of David literally gets assaulted by somebody wearing a keffiyeh, and it's now we got to sit down and have a relationship? No, that's assault. He didn't do anything. He exists sitting there existing. It's disrespectful to force him to sit down and have a conversation with the person who did that. He's not obligated, this obligation. He's not obligated to understand that kid's point of view. That kid's obligated to understand the rules of the game, the rules of the building, the rules of the school. We don't assault people, the rules of basic decency. So this is crap, but this is dominating our schools right now. So if you're wondering why the schools are so violent, why teachers are getting beat up, why SNL can do a skit about a teacher getting beaten up by two 12-year-olds, this is why. This is exactly why. So that's restorative justice. And I think that might have brought us to the end. Oh, wait, nope. There was one more thing that a parent sent me. This was sent to me. Let's see, Indianapolis Star. This was 2020. When news broke recently that Carmel priest called Black Lives Matter organizers maggots and parasites. This, I believe, is a reading that was given to the students. See how it says name, period? I can analyze the consequences of racial profiling in society in my own community. So this was an assignment given to students going back to 2020. And this is an Indianapolis Star article. And she told me that this city, this Carmel, it says Carmel is actually more diverse than some of its Hamilton County neighbors. Over 10% of its population is Asian, but 2.7% of its population is Black, according to the most recent blah, blah, blah. Beyond those demographics, this is a city that has never elected someone who is not white. So they're going through this whole reading. The kids are reading where the city is being cast as bad because it hasn't ever elected somebody who's not white. What message did Carmel resident hope to convey by quoting the verse? They're going in and analyzing, I guess this is like English class. They're analyzing what was said. They're analyzing the article. They're analyzing the list. But what is the meat of it? It's political. The message is pretty loud and clear. It's pro-activist. It's this worldview of us and them, and race is all important. I'm not saying don't ever read an article like this. Have a debate class, cover this in debate, cover this in even civics if you want to, whatever. But English class, math class, science class, they're infusing this into everything. And then they're not using discipline. And they're picking books based on these kinds of narratives. They're talking to kids about Lenin and obligation and group membership. And all of it feeds back up to this goal of UNESCO that our students are supposed to feel a sense of group obligation to the biggest collective there is, the planet. We're so far away from individual liberty now. And that's the point. That's the point. All right, let's take another quick look through your comments. Let's see. Jenny says both undergraduate and graduate education students have mandatory courses in that way of thinking. Yes, they do. It's absolutely mandatory at this point. Then Steve says, look up CDC, HIV surveillance, also tied to human trafficking, heavily involved with special education. What is going on right now with special ed and also the foster system, I don't go down that rabbit hole, Steve, because it upsets me. I already have nightmares. But he's not wrong. There's some scary crap going on with when the government can take your children for reasons having nothing to do with you totally failing or abusing them. And they can come up with reasons. And then you have to wonder, like, who's caring for my kid? Where is my child? what are they doing to my child while they're in captivity, essentially? Uh, you don't want to know. Some of the stuff that I've heard, it's, I haven't verified it, but I bet it's true. I really do. David Goodnow says, Manalulu, remember Trump made a major and successful effort to get employers to stop letting HR prejudice against convicts for hiring. Way too many find it hard to get honest legal work. Yeah, I think it depends on the what the crime was. And some industries, can be encouraged, but others maybe not. If you're handling money, it's maybe not the greatest idea, depending what you were convicted of. Just an average man says Kansas is the Bible Belt, much higher percentage of active participation in churches. Yes, but my point is that can backfire because the parents then assume that because I and my neighbors all think this way, or we tend to think this way, we all go to church, we're conservative, or we're traditional. The teachers in our school will be too. Who would come and work in our schools? Who would want to be here? Who would, our superintendent, all the people that we choose to, on the school board, everybody is going to represent us properly. It's a combination of ignorance, meaning a lot of people who run for school board don't understand where curriculum comes from. They don't. You can't know. I mean, it takes me months, weeks, years to dig into this stuff. You can't know it all. Sometimes they don't realize until after multiple years serving on a school board how impotent they are. The other thing is the teachers are all educated the same way. It doesn't matter where they go to school to become teachers. And then the certification process has a lot of this professional development, kind of garbage, not to do with instructional design. Being a standards-based curriculum forces them to go just match. Are the boxes checked? Does it align with state standards? They don't know the subject. Do you think the teacher teaching that Lenin lesson is some hardcore communist? Probably not. That's the sad part. She's probably like a low-key social justice person who became a teacher and went to New Jersey because she's left-leaning and, or she's from there, whatever. And she thinks she's doing the greatest thing ever, social justice. But no, I don't think she's a radical communist, or the odds are against it. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. She doesn't know anything else. She doesn't know enough history to question that lesson, to see what I see in it, to look at it and go, what's missing here? She doesn't know. And neither do a lot of the parents, and neither do a lot of the school board members, and neither do the principals, and neither do all these people. People who know these things don't work in schools. David says, the reason we learn, have you done a video on the differences between critical thinking and critical reasoning? I have not. I did a video a long time ago that I'm not very proud of because I looked into critical thinking and I was trying to explain how we're not teaching it. And then I did more research to find out that critical thinking was really defined by Dewey, who was bad, socialist. And so I actually use the term, I'll use critical thinking as shorthand for my audience because they think of it as critical reasoning, or like not critical in terms of critical pedagogy, but they'll think of it as reasoning and not the critical theory type of like thinking of things in a critical way. So I prefer to use, but I really prefer the term active thinking or logical reasoning. And in terms of teaching, Socratic method. But it's logic that's missing. It's logic that is missing. You can think critically and rationalize all manner of crap. You can find evidence to support just about anything you want these days. You can find evidence to support the notion that a man can be a woman. Because what we call evidence these days is very loose. So critical thinking and critical reasoning can be done without any logic whatsoever. It's logic that's missing. Once you apply logic and you tell somebody, if you run into a contradiction, then one of your premises is wrong and you need to go find it. I can almost guarantee you most of the people teaching school today have no idea what I'm talking about. Let's see. Ego Brain says this curriculum already failed. No supersize me documentary. I think it is there. That explains all of the people on the internet that I find that don't understand ratios. Oh, God. It's with any math. You can't teach You can't teach more advanced math if they don't understand arithmetic. If they don't understand basic math, you can't teach them ratios and statistics and all of that. It's utterly ridiculous what they were teaching those kids. Insane. David Goodnow says, I audited the community college anatomy and physiology class for nurses when I was in second grade. I tested for fun better than my mom who was taking it to be a nurse. What's the big deal? Okay, now that's actually interesting that you said that, because science, and if you're talking about anatomy and physiology, you're talking a lot about, depending on what level you were at, it could have been a lot of memorization. And if you were talking about that when we were doing the sex ed class, again, there's a different context. Memorizing body parts, like this is this body part, that's that body part, this is what it's used for, but like really very fact-based and not in a context of sex. Okay. Might be fine. I don't know. I just think the way they're doing this is it's over their head thematically, put it that way. It's not so much that, knowing what a penis is and a vagina is and whatever, that's bad for a kindergartner. That's not what I'm saying. They're teaching all of this stuff, making very clear to these kids they're going to touch. Okay. And what they're going to be used for. That might be a little soon for some of those children. Okay. That's my point. But it's interesting that you mentioned about science, because just today I found something, and it was about making science fun. And they had a teacher talking about, I'm so excited about it was culturally relevant science education. And she says, we're making science fun. I'm like, science doesn't need to be made fun. Science is fun. Science just is fun. If science isn't fun, you're doing it wrong. There's some subjects that you might say, well, that might not always be fun. I would argue that all of them are fun if you're doing it right, if you're teaching it right. But science especially for kids. It's so weird that by the time you get to physics and chemistry, maybe it's a little less fun because there's a lot of math involved. It's kind of challenging. But elementary school? This was elementary school. If you need help making science fun in elementary school, what the frick are you doing? That's what I don't get. This need to describe everything's default position as boring. We have to make it fun and engaging. I need lesson plans to help me that make it fun and engaging. I need games and, make it fun, make it fun. Someone else make it fun. I'm like, you're the teacher. If you don't like your subject enough to radiate fun while teaching it, to come up with cool stuff to do, experiments and different things to teach a scientific concept, don't teach science. Don't teach, period. If you don't find any of this, you shouldn't be doing the job. You're not a factory worker. You're not assembling widgets. But that too often is like, oh, I like this lesson, man. It makes it fun. For whom? The student or you? So, okay, then we get to, Ego Brain says, my teachers had the alphabet maps, motivating quotes, shapes, etc. It seemed to work great. I know, right? We have the presidents. We had the president in elementary school. We had, the key presidents, right? In one class, we had all of them. We had them all around the classroom, right? And we would play a game just for fun. The students, the teacher didn't make us do this, but we would try to who could memorize all the presidents in order with the map of the states. We played capitals games. We memorized stuff. And I remember as a kid, because I was in Montessori school and then I went to public school, and I loved Montessori school so much. And then when I got moved into public school and they skipped me and I put me into fourth grade, I was barely 8 years old. And so I was a little out of place. I was shorter than everybody else and I didn't know multiplication yet. But I remember one of the things I did kind of like about public school that I didn't have in Montessori, when you're a little kid and all your friends are going off to real school, like what I thought was real school. I liked the fact that we had the maps and we had the multiplication tables on the walls and we had the presidents and it was facts to memorize. That tripped my trigger. I can't speak to other people's memories, but I actually kind of liked knowing things. I liked learning something new that I didn't know the day before and just memorizing a bunch of stuff. And I thought that was kind of cool. It got less cool as the years went on. Obviously, as you get to higher level stuff, it becomes less cool to just memorize things. But when you're young, I think we forget kids actually like knowing stuff. They like coming home and going, "Did you know?" um, I step down. And then let's see, Ethan Harris says that's leftism. They teach the little Jewish child that as a result of being assaulted, they now have an obligation to the offender. Yep, that's exactly what they said. That's exactly what they said. They said that the student, in fact, they suspended the student who was getting assaulted, and they said that um, because he then went and he posted something on Instagram about, the flags they were wearing around the school, that he was guilty of anti-Palestinianism. Yeah, that's a true story. Let's see. Oh, wait. So Ego Brain says the curriculum before it had the supersize me doc. That will forever be how I rate curriculum. Okay. Tony Baloney says major contradiction in New York City. 2,000 plus unvaxxed teachers were fired, but the DOE brought in another 3,000 unvaxxed students. Contradictions abound. Remember I said logic is what's missing? Well, you can do that when you can do that when you don't use logic. Deb Schmidt says, as a board member, I just watched 5 of us approve curriculum they never reviewed. Yep. Yep. And I don't know the reasoning for you guys, but what I've heard from other board members is they're under pressure because the schools, the teachers come to them and go like, we need this approved. We need this approved. We need it paid for. We need it. And they either don't give you the time to go through it, or they simply tell you it's not up to you to review it or approve it. It's their job to do that, and you guys just have to pay for it or approve that it can be bought, that it can be paid for, that it aligns to state standards. No one's going to get like in trouble for not aligning to state standards or something like that. And so if you're given all that messaging and not a lot of time to go through it, and it ends up being just your desire as a board to go through it so you can tell your constituents we went through it and we approved it because we knew what it was, they don't really give you that opportunity, and you don't have the authority to say we're not approving it until we've all had time to go through it. So that would be my guess. You said it was so imbalanced I had to vote no. Wait, so she says no, we had a curriculum review committee made up of teachers and they didn't review it. It was Savas, which used to be Pearson. Okay, I'll have to look into that. So the teachers just chose not to review it. What that tells me then is that they either already agreed with it or were told to agree with it because it was aligned with something they already believed. Or they just didn't want to run afoul of some big cheese in the teaching team. That's the only thing I can think of. And then she says, I try so hard only to be voted down 3-2. Yeah. Yep. Pressure in no time. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. And a lot of parents don't understand this. And so what I notice is, and you have my sympathy because a lot of parents go hard at school boards. The school board, and they're screaming at the school board. And I'm like, in some cases, you might be right. If you know the individuals are just complete train wreck, horrible people, then, by all means. But most often, the school boards are made up of people just like you, and they go in there with good intentions. Not all, but the regular community members, do. I don't think teachers should be allowed to be on the board, if you want my honest opinion. It's a conflict of interest. But even if it's a different district than the one they work in, I just don't think they should be. I don't. I just think it's a conflict, and it's not because the school board's not supposed to choose curriculum, so putting a teacher on there makes it more of a conflict of interest. That's your last line of defense if you don't want to pay for something that's just bad. Then the teacher's there, what are you going to do? Plus you have union influence and it gets a little dicey. But I think we need to know who your school board members are and make sure your criticisms are legitimate. Make sure you understand what they get to vote on, what they don't get to vote on, what they can consult with each other on and what they can't. Almost nothing. It's hard to like caucus with your school board members. It's just really difficult to do. And because of open meeting rules and things like that. And and they just don't have the authority. In most cases, they don't have the authority to do what most parents are asking them to do. Ban this book from the library or get this book out of the library or whatever. And let's say every member of the school board wanted to do that. They would be limited in their power to do that. School board members don't get to just walk into the school either, by the way. They don't get to just, like show up one day, walk into the school. I'm a school board member. Let me in. Hey, I'm just walk around the school. I'm going to observe a class. I'm going to go to the library, pull some books off the shelves. They don't get to do that. They don't have that kind of power. And I keep telling people that, and they don't listen to me. They're like, oh, but the school board. I'm like, they're not God. That's not how it works. Very often, because they don't have authority to do good things, they tend to recruit or attract people who just enjoy the power of stonewalling parents and letting parents sit and scream at them and, deflect attention away from unions and teachers, but it's not going to solve anything. And then when somebody good gets elected, like Deb over here, she's like, I'm trying. I'm one person. I can't do anything. So anyway, that's just something I would say with that is going to the school board and yelling into the microphone is good for only one purpose, and that's drawing attention of the other parents to an issue where you need to have a camera on you and things recorded and lots of people hearing what you have to say. That's all it does. That's all it is. You might as well turn around and talk to them, because the school board, it's cathartic, but that's about it. Dave says, my high school driver's education class was taught by the police liaison officer. 30 years later, I'm trying to get approval for a liaison officer to teach the state legal code from his book. They're not approving that? I guess I'm confused. Tony Baloney says, grocery store contradiction. You can only have a plastic bag if you pay them 50 cents to save the environment, but you can use the plastic produce bags with handles for the same purpose. Things like that abound. Oh, you know what? I forgot to show you guys. I apologize. Remember I said I'd show you an example of standards because we were talking about it. My bad. Before we go. Okay. So here's a lesson also from New Jersey. Here we have acting as an ally. Lesson 22. This is grades 3 through 5. Rationale. The purpose of this activity is for students to explore the different ways to act as an ally, provide tools to help them do so. This lesson provides an opportunity to students to expand their thinking. It's always expand their thinking. Like they're walking around already going, well, I have thoughts already on allyship at 3rd grade level. I already have thoughts. Now we're going to just expand their thinking. All right. Around what is ally behavior, explore the ways in which they have and have not acted as an ally in the past, and explore ally behavior by writing realistic fiction. This is where they get all that narrative crap. By the time they come to me to write an essay, I get narratives. These honor students are coming to me for help with their college essays, and they've written me a freaking story. And I'm like, this isn't an essay. What do you mean? Yes, it is. My teacher told me to write it like a story. And like, it's an essay. Is your teacher applying to college or you? They ask you a specific question that you need to answer. It's not realistic fiction time. It's not narrative time. And they don't know the difference. What's the difference? I don't know what an essay is. So I'm the first person ever in most cases with my students to assign them reading of essays. They've not read essays. They don't know what an essay is. I'm assigning them Orwell and, people like that. Like, here, go read this. Go read essays. Go read. I mean, they have no idea what I'm talking about. Then after they read the essay, like, oh, E.B. White. Like, go read this. And then they come back like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, yeah. I was like 17 paragraphs into your thing and I still didn't know what was going on. Okay. I'm waiting for you to answer the question. They've got a stack of applications like this. They're not reading that. Anyway, but here we have 3rd and 5th graders, and we're talking about allyship and writing realistic fiction about allyship. This is 100% activism. 100%. Students will consider ways to act as an ally. How about if they should act as an ally? Nope, that's never questioned. It is presumed. It is presumed you do not have personal boundaries. You have an obligation to be an ally. This is 100% political. Students will reflect on the ways they have acted and not. Oh, I said that. Students will explore ally behaviors by writing realistic fiction story about acting as an ally. So they're going to make up a bunch of crap based on things that they've discussed in class. And then this happened, this bad thing, and then I went and did it, and I did the good thing. I did good things. I'm going to imagine myself into a story where I am virtuous. And then we wonder why these kids are at protests, from the river to the sea. What river? I don't know. What sea? I don't know. I heard that we were doing something good for people who are hurting and getting bombs and stuff and like that. And so I'm here to help. I'm being an ally. I learned in third grade. That was really important. Yay. Free Palestine. Um, Remind students about the different roles that are played in bullying and bias situations. Focus on the ally role and ask students to define ally as someone who helps or stands up for someone who is being bullied or the target of a bias. Is it always your job to stand up for people who are the target of bias? What if I'm biased against somebody for a good reason? There are lots of really good reasons to be biased against someone. Why don't we have a conversation about when it's okay to be biased against people? Like bullies, for example, very biased against them. No, I don't think I need to be their allies. For the previous lesson, read aloud the index cards students wrote with their ideas about how to act as an ally. After hearing some of those ideas, ask students, what are some ways to act as an ally when you see a situation of bullying or bias? Again, always presuming we lead with the presumption. The sunk premise is you have an obligation to do something. Your life doesn't belong to you. Your time in the school doesn't belong to you. Your job is to be there for others. Always others. Come up with a list that looks like the following and ask for examples. Okay. Oh, wait, let's go back. Here we have time 45 minutes. Anti-bias pillars, champion justice, common core standards, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Well, they're reading, they're writing, they're realistic fiction, they're speaking about being an ally, and they're listening to their teacher tell them how important it is to be an ally, whether they like it or not. Set competencies, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness. That's the new part of Castle. That's the transformative, you belong to other people part. Relationship skills, really? No, one of the most important relationship skills is defining your own boundaries. No wonder they need the sex ed unequal relationships class. By the time they get to being old enough to have sex relationships, they think they have no legitimate boundaries. So maybe it'd be a good idea to teach them that, yes, it's actually, you don't need to be an ally to the person who wants to date you that you don't want to date. You don't need to do that. It's okay. You're not offending anyone. It's okay to say no. Let's see what else. Support the responsible decision making, because the only responsible decision is to help people. Large group discussion, self-reflection in writing, fishbowl, realistic fiction writing. Keywords and phrases, ally, never, often, self-reflection, sometimes. Flipped classroom idea. Make a short video of you talking about the acting as an ally self-reflection handout. You should fill out the form and verbally share what your responses are. So now you're going to role model this whole thing for them. So all they got to do is copy you and yay, success. Fishbowl options. If you guys don't know what fishbowl is, due to the sensitive nature of these discussions about bullying and bias, you may choose to do this fishbowl activity in a variety of ways. You can have students who are inside the fishbowl talk about their own experience with bullying, bias, and acting as an ally, or they can talk about one that they witnessed or observed. If there's so much bullying and bias going on in your school that you are devoting a class time of 45 minutes to doing this kind of a lesson with 8 to 10-year-olds, maybe your restorative justice needs some work. Maybe it's not working at all. Oh, that's right. I forgot. This isn't about that. This is about social engineering. This isn't about preventing bias. This isn't about preventing bullying. This is just a new way to bully people. Be an ally. You're not a good ally. Why aren't you a good ally? You're supposed to be doing ally things. Why are you not doing ally things? That's not a good ally thing. This is a better ally thing. My ally things are better than yours. Look at my list. Explain to students. Tell students, explain the ground rules. Oh my God. Anyway, so the lesson, it goes on and on. Then we have the standards. Correlation to the Common Core learning standards. Content area standard. Read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and make logical inferences from it. Cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking to support conclusions drawn from the text. Now, you might read this as a parent and go, that sounds fine. What's wrong with that? Sounds like a great standard. I just showed you how they're doing that. Right? Quite a bit different from student will be able to write a paragraph using examples from the text. Text will be challenging and teach them about themes, universal themes. They will learn a vocabulary. They will broaden their horizons about people, whatever. Or just plain, they will read these books. Determine central ideas or themes of a text. This is creating an inclusive classroom environment. What text are they getting themes from? Write arguments to support claims. And then they have the different levels. So this is what we do, that we check the boxes. And they don't have to align with all the standards. They just have to align with enough that they can say it's aligned with standards. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, whatever. And then we can go through here. But this is what standards look like. And notice they're different from grades K through 2 and 3 through 5. Different levels. And when you go and correlate it with a lesson, they usually, see, here's the children's books that you can use. Fish for Jimmy, Gifts from the Enemy. Lend a Hand, poems about giving. My Name is Bilal, and One. Okay. And the standards this aligns with are, usually it lists them. They just say here, Common Core standards, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So my guess is when they came over here, this is part of creating an inclusive classroom environment. And they probably just look at, oh, look, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We're doing those things. The lesson said so. Okay. So hopefully you understand now why I'm so down on the standards-based curriculum. It's just like a little Chinese menu. Pick one from column A and 2 from column B. And you have a not so very nutritious meal. So there's that. All right. Let's see. Okay. David says, we had an awesome cop who taught how it was literally impossible to obey all of the contradictory laws, but how to avoid obvious and non-obvious mistakes. Nobody does that now. Nope. You're just supposed to obey them all, and they enforce whichever ones they feel like that day. Is allyship like DEI? Well, it's part of that. Diversity, equity, inclusion puts, these kind of the race markers and identity markers above all else. So allyship, yes, does involve that. You don't have the same obligation to people who are not a member of a marginalized group. They'll say, oh, you learn allyship, but you don't just get to be an ally of, like, for example, somebody looks like me. I don't get to say, well, I was being an ally to the other Jewish kid because that kid with the Palestinian flag as a cape was picking on my friend, so I stuck up for him. That's not going to fly, because the protected person in that scenario is the guy with the Palestinian flag. So my allyship would probably be recast as ganging up on the kid wearing the Palestinian flag, and we would now be classified as bullies. And we could say all day long, when he was calling him the K word and saying, you're a pig and you're a Zionist and whatever, nasty words, you're a Nazi, blah, blah, blah. And that kid might be like, no, don't call him a Nazi. We understand that you're feeling marginalized and hurt, but don't, it's not nice. But you, That's how that would go. So DEI fits into allyship in terms of, remember I read to you before about like obligations can change. And sometimes a society gets to decide who has obligations to whom and who has more of this to that. Is it? That's what happened. DEI creates that, allows that. Whereas when it was just equality under the law, when it was just equality, period, and all the students were, had equal rights, it didn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what flag you're draping around your shoulders. It doesn't matter how wounded, what trauma your ancestors are carrying around or whatever. It's irrelevant. The rules of the school are this. You're in the school. That person's in the school. You don't get to treat each other like that, period, full stop. And we're going to use some judgment. Is that who did what to whom first? And that's how that's going to go. That's logic. That's enforcing things equally, fairly. What they do is they change the meaning of fair to mean, the communist version of fair. Each according to his needs, from each according to their ability and all that. And ability is defined as, whether you're oppressor or oppressed, blah, blah. That's where DEI comes in. Tony says, my immigrant classmate thought essay is a way of saying, oh, cute. Essay. New rule, never tell commie teachers to come up with a list. Yeah, it's a bad idea. And then David says, oh, I would so have abused that program. My teacher would have hated life. Then leave them kids alone says, what about my kids being bullied? Who stands up for them with the scales of inequity? Nobody. That's the point. That's the point. But that's about leveling the playing field. We're going to level the playing field, right? We level it. That's how we get equity. We take the top down. We snip the tall poppies. We mow the grass. They're not doing so well lifting everybody up, especially when you tell people, oh, poor you, you're a victim. You're oppressed. The world doesn't like you. Everything's stacked against you. You're not exactly going to rise to the occasion, are you? All right. Don't know what he's talking about with ball, but okay. Then Ethan Harris says obligation, like I said earlier, in their view, obligation is more important than real virtue. The sense of ought is a mandate, not conscious morality. Bingo. Somebody understood the assignment. Very good, Ethan. You're right. And then Ego Brain says, Deb, my son graduated 2 Fridays ago. I found you several years ago and you gave me the courage to pull him from online school and do it myself. I just want to thank you. Best decision. Oh, that makes me so happy. I'm so happy to hear that. And congratulations to your son. And I want every parent watching this to read that right there. Because the reason I do these things, or I snarkily go through all this curriculum, which is nauseating, honestly, is to get you guys to realize, like, you're smarter than that. You really are. You really, really are. First of all, when you went to school, most parents today went to school, even believe it or not, millennial parents, because a lot of the stuff just got suddenly a lot worse. Like it was bad, but it got suddenly a lot worse. You know enough. You know how to use the internet? You're fine. You know how to read? You're good. You know how to do basic arithmetic? You're just fine. Everything you need to teach your own children or get them an education. Okay, I always hesitate to say teach your own children because then parents go, I don't want to. Okay, fair enough. Wish you did, but understand. There's certain subjects I don't love teaching my own children. And there's some I couldn't. Advanced math, no, lost. But thank goodness there's so much out there that helps you much better than this garbage. All the curriculum I showed you today is designed specifically for public school. Some privates will use some of this too, especially like parochial schools who will still follow Common Core standards very much. They might just do things with a little more what they call rigor. So they might choose harder books, or they might do a little less on the secular stuff, but they'll still do this upstander allyship SEL garbage. They do. And the private schools that are secular do more of it, but it's designed for the institutional school environment. When you go looking for help to teach algebra to your homeschool kid, that's totally different First of all, you have all kinds of things to choose from, including possibly the textbook you remember from when you were a kid. True story. When my daughter was taking pre-calc, she was using a textbook that was at least a decade old, the edition, because it was totally fine. Nothing wrong with it. I could buy it used for $5. I didn't teach the class. She took an online class with PhDs in math who have an online homeschool, high school math program. They use a textbook. They're like, you don't need to buy some fancy new textbook. This one's perfectly fine. And we're going to teach to it. That's what you can get with homeschooling. I didn't teach pre-calc. Are you guys crazy? But it also didn't cost as much as private school because I only paid for math, Latin, and a history class. There was one history class I wanted her to take. I wanted this other guy to teach it. But that's it. The rest, I know how to pick English books. I know how to, yeah, that much I can do. So you know enough. And with little kids, it's even easier. They're like sponges. So you don't need to subject them to all of this crap. What are they not learning? In the time they're spending reading about the city of Carmel and its racial composition and the ratios of races and this and that town and in their math class, and then, the science of food deserts in another class, and then we're going to do allyship and we're going to read about some lesbian who was so afraid of her own thoughts that she had to like run away to all the way as far away as she could go without leaving the country and then move to New York. And then, everybody's bullying you all the time. I mean, what are they not learning? Self-efficacy, first of all, optimism, second of all, how to solve any problem without somebody else coming in to help them or tell them how to do it. This is just, I don't know what to tell you. We're hobbling these kids. It's worse than wimps. They're becoming handicapped. So, I spy the lie. Do you know who invented the concept of cultural competency? Our school district tried to pass a cultural competency plan a few years ago, but failed, wondering how it would end up in education. Gloria Ladson Billings is the person you would want to look up. Gloria Ladson Billings pretty much invented culturally relevant education and culturally responsive education. They're both, or pedagogies, culturally responsive pedagogy, culturally relevant pedagogy, which is basically the same as cultural competency, is the supposed outcome of it. It's kind of ridiculous. What is that even? Who gets to measure that? But this is just another one of those sort of buzz terms. I believe, I don't know if I did a Words of Wokeism video about cultural competency, but I'm pretty sure I did one on cultural relevance or cultural responsiveness or both. So you can check the Words of Wokeism playlist and there might be a short video, not long like this, be like 20 minutes at most, explaining what it is. But Gloria Ladson Billings is where that comes from. James Banks too. Thank you, James Banks. But Billings is like the grand poobah of it, as far as makes the rounds, goes all over the country speaking, and everybody, thinks she's some kind of, I don't know, goddess or whatever. And yes, Latin was great. You're very welcome. I spy the lie. So let's see. And then Deb Schmidt says, read the book, The Anxious Generation, covers cell phone destruction of our kids, lots of data. Yes. Yep. That's a really important point. And I'll finish with this. I can sit and show you all this curriculum and tell you how terrible the schools are and all this, and that it's across public, private, charter, all of it, because they all go to the same curriculum and the teachers are all trained the same way. So you're really, as long as you stay in the government funded, government regulated, government has their fingers in any of it ecosystem, you're going to be exposed to this. You just are. Okay. And to the extent that you might be in a charter school that, says, we don't do the Common Core and we don't use any of this, we have our own curriculum. You still have to know the teachers and the administrators, because while they may have gravitated towards that school to get away from that other stuff, that doesn't automatically make them competent to teach that curriculum. I'm sorry to say and speak ill of my fellow teachers, or I haven't been one in so long in the classroom. The vast majority of them who are truly competent have either left or are leaving or they've been shoved out. So new ones coming in or the ones who are still there are highly political. And I don't mean like Republican, Democrat. They're also political organization people, meaning they defer to their director. They defer to head of school. They defer to their boss. They defer to their manager. They are not stand alone, stand up, you know, defenders of liberty, defenders of your kids' individual right to learn their way. Mm-mm. The best you can hope for is they're not using this garbage. They're using like a classical curriculum, but they may not be the best person to teach it. You would do better. You, the parent who love your child, as meager as you think your abilities are, would do better than the person who's looking over their shoulder going, how do I please my boss? How do I keep this job? How do I, not offend anybody? How do I, work within this little system and be a good little organization person? Because those jobs are few and far between, they don't want to lose them for any reason. And it becomes very, very office politics like. So that's my warning is that the thing you want your teachers to be most preoccupied with? So you still have to pay attention. And so the final point is that even if you avoid all that, and let's say you homeschool like you, Brain did, your number one job as a parent, it says your number one job as a parent, period, wherever your kids go to school or don't go to school. But your number one job is to build your relationship with your child. This is about parenting. Education is the biggest thing you'll do as a parent. And you are doing it even if you're not doing it. When you send them to a school and these are their lessons, you are teaching them a lesson that you're okay with this. If you argue with it and say, I'm not okay with this, but you keep sending them back, you're teaching them the lesson that you will put up with abuse, with things you don't like. You will rather than inconveniencing yourself or finding another way or solving the problem. If you keep going to government or going to somebody else to solve it for you, give you a way out, et cetera, and you don't just leave and get them out of that situation, the message they're getting is something else is more important than either your principal's mom of how much you dislike this. Maybe you just like to complain. Maybe you are a Karen, or me. I'm just not that important because you could just pull me out. Right. So the message they're getting is this is fine on some level and mom's just pitching a fit. If they're a teenager, they're inclined to believe that anyway. So you're always teaching them something. Be aware of what the something is. Be very, stop and ask yourself, what is the hidden lesson I'm teaching? When I complain, when I don't complain, when we go back, we don't go back. When we, when I ask for a different teacher, when we move from this school to that school, like there's something they're taking from this. So you're the most important teacher. Build that relationship. It starts at birth. Keep going. Don't give them a cell phone. They don't need a cell phone. They don't. Somebody, 7th grade, 8th grade, they need a cell phone. They don't need a smartphone. I know it's pretty hard to get a non-smartphone. Do your best. And if you can't, then strip that thing down to the bones, like lock it down. And this is where schools make it hard for you. They make it so hard for you. You need Class Dojo and you need this app and you need the Stop It app and you need this other app and you need Google on the phone because we do things. And you need to be able to get online and go on Kahoot because we do Kahoots in the classroom. They don't make it easy for you to be a good parent. And then once you say it's okay for this thing, how do you justify saying it's not okay for the other thing? And how do you make sure it's locked down when they get home and not at school? And then if it's not locked down at school so they can use Kahoot, then they can use other things while they're at school too that you don't want them to have. And you have to constantly stay on top of what are apps that have some kind of private messaging capability that I wasn't even aware of. And those Chromebooks and the VPN that they can use from home, by the way. So they're like, I'm going to shut down the Wi-Fi. And the kid's going, I have access to the school VPN. Nice try, Mom. No, it's when you co-parent with a school, any school, you're co-parenting with all those people, all of them, all the teachers, administrators, paraprofessionals, counselors, the resource officer, the school board members, the union. That's your community now. So, you know, just keep that in mind. Very important. Build that relationship with your kid. They need to, your trust bond needs to be like this. You need to be their most important person. And like I said, that if it's strong before they go to school and then you have to keep working on it, family dinner, all the things, but it can be broken in an instant. If something happens, like they get bullied at school and your response is, I'm going to go in and talk to the school, and the school does nothing and you don't leave, that trust bond is damaged. And I don't mean to sound like a bully or make or judge people. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tell you that like you have the power now to fix this for your children. Only you can decide what it's going to take. And Leave Them Kids Alone says, I need a spare 60,000. Yeah. Money's the big one. Money's the big one. But that's why I try to tell people, if you're concerned about where your kid is going to be all day, it's a childcare situation. If you have a special needs child, that's a whole other ball of wax. But there's so much abuse that goes on in the schools of special needs kids. They're not getting their needs met. And so you may sometimes have to think about it as a childcare situation until you can figure out what to do next. It is not easy. This is a monopoly. They've taken all the money and they're making it hard for you to find alternatives. I can do a whole other show on school choice. I'm not going to talk about it today. I'm not for it. You guys all know that. That doesn't mean I love public schools. Obviously, I don't. I just want the government out of it. They screwed it up. They shouldn't have been in it in the first place. And I genuinely believe everyone would be better off, parents especially, families especially, if they did not have that stranglehold on such a giant chunk of money and on the market for these products and services. So I don't want to expand that. I don't want to expand that further into the private sector. Don't want to do it. That's me. Your mileage may vary. All right, you guys, 3 hours. Wow, that was epic. Thank you for sticking around with me. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this informative. This was a tiny, tiny slice of the curriculum pie. It was just meant to give you, like I said, the lay of the land of the different layers of like where it comes from, worldview, et cetera, on down to the lesson plan. But that's what I'm here for. So once again, please like, share, subscribe, consider joining the Woke Screen community, wokescreen.com/the reason we learn. And I'm here for you. So thank you for joining, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.